I vividly recall the day I first encountered Alex as though it unfolded just yesterday. I found myself nestled in a quaint dive cafe, nursing the most affordable cup of coffee available, attempting to untangle the web of my scattered thoughts and aspirations. That's when he strolled in, akin to a scene plucked from a cinematic masterpiece, albeit devoid of any dramatic lighting or accompanying melodies. Instead, the atmosphere was defined by the gentle jingle of the doorbell and the lingering aroma of stale coffee, mingled with his distinct aftershave. "Is the seat taken?" he inquired, gesturing towards the empty chair opposite me with a smile capable of inducing instant infatuation. "It looks free to me," I responded, striving for an air of nonchalance, despite the flurry of excitement his unexpected presence stirred within me. As conversation ensued, it became increasingly apparent that we shared a kinship that transcended mere acquaintance. Our interests aligned seamlessly, from indulging in mindless television series to engaging in spirited debates over preferred pizza toppings. Pineapple, anyone? Fast forward, and we transitioned from casual encounters to a genuine relationship that felt as though it had spanned lifetimes. Before we knew it, discussions of matrimony were underway. Yet, amidst the burgeoning romance, the specter of drama loomed. Alex's parents, a force to be reckoned with, greeted me with thinly veiled scrutiny upon our initial encounter. Their smiles, though ostensibly welcoming, betrayed an underlying assessment of my worthiness. "So, you're the girl Alex can't stop talking about," his mother remarked, her tone tinged with a coldness that sent shivers down my spine. "Guilty as charged," I retorted, masking any semblance of insecurity. However, their insistence on a prenuptial agreement struck a discordant note. While I harbored no ulterior motives, the notion of such a contract felt inherently distrustful. "I'll sign your prenup," I acquiesced, "but under one condition. If infidelity rears its ugly head, the transgressor foots the bill, $100,000. Alex's reaction mirrored a mixture of disbelief and discomfort. Yet I remained resolute. Past experiences had taught me the value of safeguarding against betrayal. We believed this compromise would quell any familial objections, but fate had other plans. One evening, nestled together on our beloved, albeit dilapidated couch, a symbol of our shared history, we found ourselves dreaming of a future beyond our means. Italy beckoned, its allure irresistible despite our financial constraints. "Think about it, Alex," I enthused, envisioning the culinary delights and artistic wonders awaiting us. However, reality reared its pragmatic head. Our bank account screams backyard camping, rather than romantic Venetian getaway, he quipped, punctuating his words with a playful squeeze. Undeterred, I proposed a strategy of thrift and sacrifice, teasingly targeting his beloved video games as potential casualties. Our banter echoed the essence of our relationship. Dreamers grounded in the practicalities of everyday life. In the midst of mundane chores and playful banter, the topic of starting a family surfaced, a prospect both exhilarating and daunting. "Emily, we need to talk about starting a family," Alex broached, his voice tinged with uncertainty. The weight of the conversation hung in the air as we navigated the uncertain terrain of parenthood, finding solace in the unwavering support of one another. How daunting could it be? I chuckled, a blend of nerves and affection coloring my laughter. Famous last words, babe. That's how it was with us. No matter the challenge, we tackled it hand in hand. Even as Alex's mother began dropping not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren at every opportunity, we maintained our united front. "Emily, darling, when will you give me some grandbabies?" "Time isn't standing still, you know," she'd remark, her tone sugary but her message anything but. I'd plaster on a smile, biting back retorts, and Alex would interject, "Mom, give it a rest, will you? These things take time." Yet, as the months passed, pressure mounted, not just from his mother, but from within. Our desire for a family clashed with the harsh reality of infertility. Ever since Judy, his mother, discovered her newfound hobby of tormenting me, our home transformed into a battleground, her weapon of choice a razor-sharp tongue. One Sunday lunch, as we gathered for what should have been a tranquil meal, Judy barged in uninvited, her presence casting a shadow over the room. "Well, isn't this quaint?" she began, dripping with sarcasm, her gaze sweeping over our modest spread. "Emily, dear, I can see you've been slaving away in the kitchen all morning," she remarked, a smirk dancing on her lips. Attempting to diffuse the tension, I offered a feeble smile, urging her to take a seat. But Judy wasted no time before launching into her assault. "You know, Emily," she began, her voice laced with condescension, "Mrs. Henderson's grandson was just born. It got me thinking, when are you and Alex going to give me some good news?" Heat flooded my cheeks, a mixture of humiliation and indignation burning within me. I sought solace in Alex's gaze, only to find him engrossed in his plate, a feeble attempt at avoidance. "Mom, come on," he muttered weakly. But his lackluster defense only fueled Judy's relentless tirade. "Alex, dear, I don't mean to be cruel," Judy continued, "but you're not running a charity here. You work hard for your money. Why waste it on Emily if she can't even fulfill her basic duties as a wife? A cleaning service and a cook would be far more efficient, don't you think?" Unable to contain my frustration any longer, I spoke up. "Judy, I am trying my best here. It's not like I don't want to have kids. And as for the house and my cooking, well, I didn't realize marriage was a service contract." But my words fell on deaf ears. Judy remained steadfast in her judgment, her criticisms cutting deeper with each passing day. She scrutinized every corner of our home, disparaging my appearance and undermining my role as a wife. With each visit, her comments grew sharper, her disapproval more pronounced. "Is that what you're wearing?" she'd sneer. "A wife should dress to please her husband. No wonder Alex is always exhausted. He has to come home to this." I attempted to defend myself, to reason with her, but it was futile. Judy had made up her mind, and nothing could sway her perception. And in that moment, the realization dawned upon me. I was fighting this battle alone. No matter what I said or did, Alex's stance, or lack thereof, remained the most painful blow. Each night, after Judy's departure, we'd engage in heated arguments. "Why won't you stand up for me, Alex? She's walking all over us, and you're just letting her," I'd plead. "Emily, she's old, set in her ways," he'd respond. "What do you want me to do, kick my own mom out?" But it was clear this was more than just about Judy's disapproval. It was about us, our marriage, and whether we were strong enough to stand together or succumb to Judy's criticisms. As the days turned into weeks, I realized this wasn't merely a phase. It was a full-blown siege. If we didn't act soon, there might not be anything left to salvage. The strain extended beyond the home front. Alex himself began behaving oddly. It wasn't the typical stress from work. It was something deeper, something that twisted my stomach into knots. It began with the phone calls. Alex, who had always been transparent, suddenly started stepping out of the room every time he received a call, always from the same caller ID, John from work. One evening, trying to keep my voice casual, I asked, "Who's John from work?" Alex flinched, a telltale sign of unease. "Oh, just a new guy at the office. Lots of questions, you know," he replied, but his evasiveness only fueled my suspicions. Then there was his sudden interest in his appearance. Gone were the days of graphic tees and worn-out jeans. Now it was all crisp shirts, slacks, and cologne. "Since when did you care about smelling like a department store?" I teased. "Just felt like changing things up. No harm in that, right?" He replied a bit too quickly. The late nights at work became a regular occurrence. "Another long one, babe." He'd text, promising he wouldn't be late. But the clock would tick well past midnight before I heard his keys in the door. Try as I might, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That's when I made the decision to hire a private detective. It felt like something out of a bad TV show, but I needed to know for sure. The evidence arrived in a plain brown envelope. Photos of Alex with another woman, their intimacy undeniable, their conversations captured in a recording, leaving no room for doubt. Sitting there, the evidence spread out before me. I felt a cold realization settle in. This was it, the proof that could anchor me in a stormy divorce, should it come to that. But I kept it all a secret, a painful burden I chose to carry alone. I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I needed a plan, a way to navigate the wreckage of our marriage with my dignity intact. The following days were a blur. Alex continued his charade, and I played along, the perfect wife with a smile plastered on my face and a heart breaking silently. But then, one day, as I passed by Alex's office, their voices caught my attention. Alex and Judy discussing me. And what I heard changed everything. I stood there, rooted to the spot, a mix of shock and anger boiling inside me. They were planning my exit from this family as casually as one would plan a grocery list. The hurt ran deep, but it sparked something else in me, a burning desire for revenge. They thought they could use me, discard me at their convenience. I'd show them I wasn't just some pawn in their twisted game. A few days later, during a family dinner that felt more like a farce than a meal, Judy brought up her upcoming birthday with the same smirk I had come to despise. "So, Emily dear, what are you planning for my birthday? Something special, I hope?" she inquired, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I met her gaze, my face a mask of calm. "Actually, Judy, I was thinking of throwing you a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. A night you won't forget," I replied. Her eyes lit up with greed, and she exchanged a quick, satisfied look with Alex. They thought they had me cornered, but little did they know I was already 2 steps ahead. "Emily, that sounds delightful. Just close family, keep it intimate," Judy insisted, her voice saccharine. "Of course, Judy. It'll be our pleasure," I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The weeks leading up to Judy's 70th birthday felt like a slow march towards D-Day. Every smirk from her, every indifferent shrug from Alex fueled my resolve. The plan was simple yet bold: host a lavish dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant under the guise of a loving gesture, then drop the bombshell. But like any good plot, the devil was in the details. The tension at home was palpable the night before the party. Alex, oblivious to the storm brewing, was casually lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Everything's set for tomorrow?" he asked, not looking up. "Oh, you could say that," I replied, my tone belying the turmoil inside. The day arrived, and as guests filled the opulent dining room reserved for Judy's celebration, the air crackled with anticipation. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline of what was about to unfold. As we all settled in, the meal proceeded with forced mirth. Laughs were shared, stories exchanged, and then, as the dessert plates were cleared away, the waiter approached with the final act of the evening, the bill. Without missing a beat, I handed over my card, the gesture unnoticed by most. It was then Alex, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, decided to drop his bombshell. "Emily, I think it's time everyone knew. I'm tired of this of us. I want a divorce," he declared. The words hung in the air, a toxic cloud suffocating all other noise in the room. Before I could even process the full weight of his statement, Judy piped up, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "Well then, since that's out in the open, I think it's best you leave, Emily. We're celebrating family tonight, and well, you're no longer part of it." The room went deadly silent. Every eye was on me, waiting to see how I'd crumble. But I didn't. With a calm I didn't feel, I stood, nodded, and walked out without a word. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I made my way home. By the time I reached his apartment, a plan formed. I packed my essentials, the numbness giving way to a cold resolve. This was it, the end of one life and the start of another. As I zipped the last suitcase, my phone started buzzing, a relentless, insistent vibration that I initially ignored. But curiosity got the better of me. Judy's voice screeched from the other end, demanding I fix the payment issue. The sweet irony of it all. In my preparations for the inevitable, I had secured my exit strategy. I stood there, rooted to the spot, a mix of shock and anger boiling inside me. They were planning my exit from this family as casually as one would plan a grocery list. The hurt ran deep, but it sparked something else in me, a burning desire for revenge. They thought they could use me, discard me at their convenience. I'd show them I wasn't just some pawn in their twisted game. A few days later, during a family dinner that felt more like a farce than a meal, Judy brought up her upcoming birthday with her trademark smirk. "So, Emily dear, what are you planning for my birthday? Something special, I hope," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Actually, Judy, I was thinking of throwing you a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. A night you won't forget," I replied, meeting her gaze with a mask of calm. Her eyes lit up with greed, and she exchanged a quick, satisfied look with Alex. They thought they had me cornered, but little did they know I was already 2 steps ahead. "Oh, Emily, that sounds so delightful. Just close family, keep it intimate," Judy chimed in, her voice oozing fake sweetness. "Of course, Judy. It'll be our pleasure," I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The weeks leading up to Judy's 70th birthday felt like a slow march towards D-Day. Every smirk from her, every indifferent shrug from Alex fueled my resolve. The plan was simple yet bold: host a lavish dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant under the guise of a loving gesture, then drop the bombshell. But like any good plot, the devil was in the details. The tension at home the night before the party was palpable. Alex, oblivious to the storm brewing, was casually lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Everything set for tomorrow?" he asked, not looking up. "Oh, you could say that," I replied, my tone belying the turmoil inside. The day arrived, and as guests started to fill the opulent dining room reserved for Judy's celebration, the air was thick with anticipation. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline of what was about to unfold. Judy, ever the queen bee, basked in the attention, lavishing in the luxury of her surroundings. "Oh, Emily, you outdone yourself. This place is exquisite," she exclaimed, her voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. As we all settled in and the meal proceeded with forced mirth, laughs were shared, stories exchanged. Then, as the dessert plates were cleared away, the waiter approached with the final act of the evening, the bill. He leaned in discreetly, informing us the dinner cost was $33,000. Without missing a beat, I handed over my card, the gesture unnoticed by most. It was then Alex, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, decided to drop his bombshell. "Emily, I think it's time everyone knew. I'm tired of this of us. I want a divorce," he announced, his words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. Judy wasted no time in adding her poison. "Well, since that's out in the open, I think it's best you leave, Emily. We're celebrating family tonight, and well, you're no longer part of it." The room went deadly silent, every eye on me, waiting to see how I'd crumble. But I didn't. With a calm I didn't feel, I stood, nodded, and walked out without a word. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I made my way home. The finality of everything that had happened washed over me in waves. By the time I reached what used to be our shared home for the last time, a plan had formed. As I stepped through the door, the air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Alex and Judy were there, looking like they'd been arguing. "You've got some nerve showing up here after last night," Alex spat out, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. "Ungrateful wretch. You've embarrassed us in front of the whole city," Judy added, her voice sharp and unforgiving. But my mind was made up. I tossed the divorce papers on the table, the photos of Alex's infidelity on top. "You should be more concerned with this," I said, my tone steady. The color drained from Alex's face as he picked up the photos, his mother peering over his shoulder. Their outrage turned to shock, then to panic as they realized the extent of what I had. "And let's not forget the prenup, shall we?" I continued, my voice cold, final. "You cheat, you pay. $100,000 to be exact." Judy's face twisted into a snarl. "You wouldn't dare. You can't do this to us." "Oh, but I can, and I will," I replied, my tone unwavering. The begging turned to pleading, their words a desperate scramble to salvage what they could. But my mind was made up. In the end, Alex had no choice but to borrow the money from his parents to pay me. As I left that house for the last time, check in hand, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. After everything, I used the payout from Alex to put a down payment on a small but cozy place of my own. Life's quieter now, and I like it that way. Every once in a while, the grapevine tosses a juicy bit my way about Alex and Judy. But these days, it's just another piece of someone else's story. Life's simpler, quieter, and infinitely sweeter on this side of chaos.
Elise felt another asthma attack coming on. Lately, her asthma had been flaring up more frequently. The mountain of problems she faced left her no room to relax. Her body felt the strain, responding with constant health issues. Today, a demanding customer had frayed her last nerve, and an attack struck. Fortunately, Margot was on shift, always keeping a watchful eye on Elise. She noticed Elise's pallor, her confusion, and her rapid breathing. Margot quickly led Elise out of the store. "Sit here for a bit," Margot said, helping Elise to a bench by the back door. She knew Elise needed to sit and hold on to something to ease her breathing. Elise sat down, dangling her legs and gripping the edge of the bench, focusing on steady breathing and pushing away dark thoughts. The credit, the crumbling ceilings in her small apartment, daily stress at work, and arguments with her quarrelsome neighbour. She needed to forget it all, at least for a moment, to breathe normally again. Whenever an attack started, Elise would imagine herself lying in a blooming apple orchard. This mental image took her back to childhood, when her mother was still alive, and her only worry was avoiding the morning dew. She pictured the peaceful hum of birds, butterflies fluttering about, and carefree sparrows chirping. Her breathing would slow, the wheezing would subside, and the tightness in her chest would ease. She felt safe again. In her youth, during these attacks, her imagination would take her even further. She would envision a handsome man and their little children in the orchard. They would walk hand in hand, get into a car and drive to the sea, where a gleaming white yacht awaited to take them on adventures around the world. Elise felt better. Her daytime attacks were never as severe as the nighttime ones. Sometimes she could stop them before they fully took hold. Today's attack had barely begun before it subsided. Elise didn't even need her inhaler, which she tried to use sparingly due to her condition, but always kept with her. After catching her breath, she even managed a joke. "Margot, did you know there was a time when I dreamed of marrying a banker? I'd imagine him all dapper in an Italian suit, you know, with diamond cufflinks." "Oh, Elise, a banker with diamonds? You're really letting your imagination run wild. Feeling better now? Let's go back. Helen will be mad at us. We left her all alone at the register, and customers will be pouring in any minute." Margot knew that Elise no longer dreamed of a banker with diamond cufflinks, or any man at all. But there was a child in her thoughts. She had recently discovered she was pregnant. A home test confirmed her suspicions with 2 clear lines. What should have been joyous news for most women sent Elise into another severe attack. The man who had gotten her pregnant wanted nothing to do with the child or her. He didn't consider their relationship serious enough to discuss family and children. "What did you expect? That I'd want to marry you? We had some fun, that's all," he had scolded when she told him about the baby. "I never saw this as a serious option. Besides, I have another girlfriend. She's the one I'm serious about. She has money, a house, cars, and a prestigious job. What do you have? Nothing." Elise cried for a long time and eventually made a cruel and hard decision. She went to the hospital with Margot. The doctor confirmed the pregnancy at 6 to 7 weeks. When she learned that Elise didn't plan to keep it, she became serious. It always carries risks, and with Elise's negative rhesus factor and asthma, the doctor wasn't confident the procedure would be without consequences, or that she could carry a child to term in the future. The doctor managed to convey this to Elise, and was glad she could save the unborn child's life and prevent Elise from making a grave mistake. Elise decided to keep the baby, but fears of loneliness and an uncertain future triggered more frequent attacks. The doctor had warned her that this could happen in the first half of pregnancy and advised her not to worry too much about it. Elise promised to get her thoughts in order and overcome her depression to avoid attacks and panic. However, this was easier said than done, and she often had to miss work or, like today, sit in the back with her inhaler ready, trying to regain her composure. On her way home, Elise thought about the baby. Today, she felt the first gentle kick, a strange and exciting reminder that a little person was growing inside her, and she would never be alone again. In the orphanage, she had friends and caretakers who treated her well, and she had Margot at the store. But this was different. The baby was a part of her, the family she had always dreamed of, and she already loved her child with all her heart. The screech of brakes abruptly pulled Elise from her thoughts. In slow motion, she saw a car speeding towards an elderly man just steps away from her. Without hesitation, Elise lunged forward, grabbing the man's sleeve and pulling him toward her with all her might. The car still pushed him slightly, knocking him to the ground. The old man fell hard onto the sidewalk, taking Elise down with him. She miraculously stayed on her feet. Bystanders gathered and called an ambulance. The police arrived, and a breathless Elise had to give her witness statement about the accident. The old man she saved was taken to the hospital. "He's just some homeless guy. He was probably drunk and stumbled into the road." The driver tried to excuse himself. Someone in the crowd backed him up. "It's true, he's a homeless man. He's been hanging around here for days. He's not in his right mind. Like he's been hit over the head." The local janitor said he appeared out of nowhere about a week ago. "His name is John, but he doesn't remember anything else about himself." "So if he's homeless, is it okay to run him over?" Elise exclaimed indignantly. She decided she would definitely visit the old man in the hospital. John was in a ward with 3 other injured men. He didn't recognize Elise, but was overjoyed to have a visitor. The elderly man truly didn't remember what he was doing on the street. He didn't know his address or even his last name. Elise visited him again on the weekend, but the old man was no longer in the ward. He was discharged. He did ask to stay longer, but this is a hospital, not a sanatorium, the nurse explained to Elise. These homeless people throw themselves under cars to get into the hospital. They want to fatten up on government food and lie in warmth. He didn't have any serious injuries, so the doctor ordered him to be discharged. Elise was outraged by this attitude toward the old man. "If you're so kind-hearted," the nurse didn't hide her annoyance, "then take him home with you. Let him set up a resort at your place, and real patients should be treated here." And that's what Elise did. She immediately went to the intersection where she first saw the old man. John was sitting on a half-rotten old bench under a building, not far from the scene of the accident. Elise approached and touched his shoulder. The old man started at her touch. He had dozed off on the bench and was now frightened by the sudden contact. "Come with me. I'll feed you, and I have a corner for you," Elise said, seriously intending to take this stranger into her small apartment. She set up a cot for him in the kitchen, heated some tea, and provided him with bed linens and a towel. "I think you should take a bath. The warm water will soothe you, and clean clothes will make you feel better." Elise had bought some clothes for the old man at a second-hand store on her way, so John stayed with Elise. The old man turned out to be quiet and calm, not a drinker. The only problem with him was that he moaned loudly at night. Not terribly scary, but it frightened Elise very much. She would jump up and rush to the kitchen, anxiously asking the old man, "What's wrong? Are you feeling ill?" He would wake up and shake his head negatively. He couldn't answer what was tormenting him, making him moan and even scream in his sleep. On the very first night, when none of Elise's neighbours knew about the new resident in their building, the old man's cries and moans frightened not only Elise. Gwendolen, who lived on the floor below, banged on the ceiling with a mop and knocked on the radiators. Early in the morning she came to Elise's apartment with two men, tenants of their building, who liked to drink and cause trouble, and whom Gwendolen herself had complained about to the local police officer. When they saw only a pitiful old man in Elise's kitchen, they left in embarrassment. But Gwendolen, quickly regaining her composure and recognizing the recent homeless man in Elise's guest, launched into the tirade. "What was going on here last night, huh? It's outrageous. Why should the whole building wake up in fear because of you? I banged on the pipes and the ceiling, but he just kept moaning, like a wolf at the moon. I'll make sure you and that old man are evicted. You'll both end up on the street." The rumour that the unmarried, pregnant neighbour had taken in a homeless man spread quickly through the building. The neighbours whispered behind her back. They couldn't understand why a young girl would take in a strange old man in her tiny, shabby apartment. "He'll kill you one night, steal your money and burn down our building. Something can snap in his brain. I would never let such a person into my house." Gwendolen, who had always caused Elise trouble with her insufferably nasty character, became even more unbearable after the old man's appearance. She would cause scenes over the old man's nightly moans, waking up the entire building and threatening to call the police. Elise tried to ignore the spiteful neighbour's antics, although she was genuinely concerned about the old man's condition. No one knew how to help him. Over time, the old man became much calmer at night, but he never recalled who he was or why he had been on the road near their house that evening. He wasn't even sure his name was John. Perhaps someone had called him that. Who knows? Several months passed and little Sadie was born. Looking at her tiny daughter, Elise felt a mix of emotions. She was overjoyed, but also overwhelmed, wondering how she would manage with a baby and all her other responsibilities. "Don't worry, I'll help you," John assured her, but Elise knew the old man's help was limited. Surprisingly, John cleaned, did laundry, ironed and even cooked, marvelling at his own abilities. "Look, Elise, I can make soup." He stayed close to home, sometimes sitting on a bench in the courtyard with a book or magazine. Both he and Elise feared he might forget his way back if he ventured too far. Meanwhile, Elise's asthma attacks nearly stopped, and John no longer cried out at night. Life was slowly returning to a peaceful routine. None of them, neither he nor old John, could have imagined how drastically their lives would soon change. One night, little Sadie spiked a fever. It was late and there was no suitable medicines in the house. Elise didn't dare take the sick child with her to the pharmacy. John was sleeping in the kitchen and hoped Sadie wouldn't wake him, while she quickly ran to get fever-reducing medicine. Unfortunately, the nearest pharmacy was closed, and it took Elise over half an hour to find an open one. As she rushed home, clutching the medicine, her mind raced with terrifying thoughts. She imagined the old man waking up, confused, and taking Sadie out of the house, or worse, smothering her to stop her crying. When Elise finally returned, she found a very different scene. John was holding Sadie, gently rocking her and singing a soft lullaby. Elise had never heard him sing before, and it brought her a sense of peace. Sadie was sleeping peacefully in his arms, and he smiled down at her. "Elise," Sadie started crying, so I took her in my arms to soothe her," he explained. "And you know what? When I held her, I remembered everything. Elise, I had a daughter once and a wife. They died in a car accident. That's probably why I was drawn to the road. I've been alone for a long time." The old man's face lit up with sudden joy. "And I remembered something else. My name is Carl Lewis. I was a banker and a renowned collector. I'm not homeless, Elise. I have a big house of my own." Elise stared at him in disbelief. "Poor John is really losing it. I'll have to take him to the doctor tomorrow. Gwendolen was right. He's not in his right mind." "Elise, don't look at me like I'm crazy," Mr. Lewis pleaded. "Let me explain everything. And as soon as Sadie feels better, we'll go to my house. You won't believe your eyes when you see it. I live alone with my collection. I have a passion for antiques and art. Furthermore, I ended up on the street because some con artists came to my house posing as buyers and antique enthusiasts. I knew they were trying to trick me, but I played along, planning to call the police. They figured it out and attacked me, hitting me over the head with something heavy. I don't know what happened next, but I woke up in the woods, remembering nothing. I think they thought I was dead, so they dumped me there and covered me with leaves and branches. Somehow I made it to the nearest city and ended up at that intersection where you found me. I only just realised that's where my wife and daughter died 30 years ago." The old man wept, and Elise found herself believing him. 2 days later, when Sadie's fever subsided, they hired a car and set off for the city, where Mr. Lewis's house was supposedly located. "Look, Elise. Look what those scoundrels did. They ransacked the whole house." Mr. Lewis stood in the middle of his home, indignant. "These vandals have no clue about antiques. They smashed a valuable vase and took a worthless trinket that was just taking up space. What fools! They only trashed the place for nothing." Elise looked around the old man's home in amazement. Mr. Lewis hadn't lied. He indeed had a large house, and was clearly far from poor. "What idiots!" he continued. "They thought they could outsmart me, but they messed with the wrong person. Did they really think I'd keep my most valuable items on display in the kitchen or living room?" The old man pressed a hidden lever on the wall, revealing a secret room to the astonished Elise. She felt like Aladdin entering the Cave of Wonders for the first time. "I'm not crazy enough to leave such things out in the open. Those are just minor trinkets. But here, this is a collector's paradise. Look, Elise, you'll never want for anything again." "Mr. Lewis, were you really a banker?" Elise suddenly asked. "And do you have diamond cufflinks?" "I was, dear, and yes, I have cufflinks. But why do you ask?" Mr. Lewis was surprised. "Oh, I'm just curious." Elise laughed. "Come on, tell me," Mr. Lewis insisted. So Elise shared her childhood fantasies with him. The old man was surprised, but remembered her words. Mr. Lewis was indeed wealthy. Besides his collection of antiques and paintings, he had money in bank accounts and influential friends. He introduced Elise to them as his adopted daughter. "Don't be shy, Elise. You're like a daughter to me. Now we'll find you the best husband, a wealthy groom. Want me to arrange a match with a banker?" "With diamond cufflinks?" Elise laughed. "No, I don't want that." "Why not, dear? You could travel the world on a yacht with Sadie." "I don't want a yacht. I'm happy here. I'd rather go to get an education," Elise insisted. The news that Elise's tenant was a wealthy banker caused quite a stir in their city. Elise is the sole heiress of the old banker. This thought consumed Elise's ex-boyfriend. He even tried to assert his rights as Sadie's father, but Mr. Lewis quickly put him in his place. Elise attended university, and no longer dreamed of a banker or an aristocrat. She wanted a kind and caring man who could love her little daughter and be a real father to Sadie. And she found him. Eric was the son of Mr. Lewis's childhood friend, a simple artist and romantic who had never been married at 30. Sweet and modest, Elise immediately caught his eye, and he asked her to model for him. Portrait after portrait filled Eric's home, and his heart filled with love for the girl. "Elise, do you know this is the 10th portrait of you I've painted? Do you know why I keep painting only you? I want to see your face constantly and look forward to every meeting so I can paint your lovely face again and again. I'd like to propose, but I fear you'll refuse because I'm not as wealthy as your adoptive father." "Eric, do you know why I keep posing for you? I also cherish our time together. I'm a simple girl, and I don't think Mr. Lewis will mind if we start seeing each other." Eric and Elise began dating and eventually married. A year later, Sadie had a little brother, and Mr. Lewis Petrovich gifted the newborn heir his antique diamond cufflinks. Anthony walked along the cemetery paths, leisurely examining the inscriptions on the headstones. He noticed a couple who had died one after the other, much like his own parents. It seemed fitting to live a life so intertwined with another that you couldn't bear to stay behind after they were gone. The cemetery was quiet and deserted, as usual. Ahead, he saw the familiar graves where 3 years ago he had buried his parents. They had been inseparable in life and remained so in death. "Hello, my dear ones," Anthony greeted his parents. "I brought you some flowers to plant. By next spring, your plots will be beautiful. Mum, I brought your favourite tulips and daffodils. And for you, Dad, I have this stern bush with lovely leaves but no flowers. I remember, Dad, you never liked all those girly frills. So here's a purely masculine bush for you. No excesses." Anthony weeded the plots, dusted the headstones, planted the flowers and added some sand. He sat down to talk to his parents, a tradition he had kept over the years. He told them about his life, his health and his work, and shared news about mutual acquaintances. Finally, he came to the main point. "So, what's been happening to me? I've decided to get married. Remember, Mum, I told you about Sloane last time. She's from a simple family, a good girl who needs support. Her father is an invalid and her mother has worked at a factory all her life. I think my help would be valuable to them. They haven't done repairs in a long time, her father can't, and her mother is always working. I could help with that. Thanks, Dad, for teaching me so much. You know, I've already proposed to Sloane, but not very seriously, more like a joke. She said she'd think about it. Today I want to make it official, so I came to ask for your blessing." Anthony sat a little longer, said his goodbyes, and slowly made his way toward the exit. He wasn't rushing because he was deep in thought about what he was about to do. He and Sloane had been together for 6 months, and from the moment he met her, he knew she was the one he wanted to marry. Furthermore, he noticed that Sloane took his talk of marriage lightly and understood that she was still very young. But he wanted a family, tired of casual dating, and wanted everyone to know that Sloane was his woman, his wife, with whom he would raise children and live until death, just like his parents. Lost in thought, Anthony nearly collided with a young boy standing by a fresh grave. "Sorry, kid, I was lost in thought and didn't see you. What are you doing here? A cemetery is no place for children to play." "I came to visit my mum. Today is her birthday," the boy replied. He looked no older than 6, thin and frail. Anthony glanced at the headstone and was shocked to see the photo and name of a girl he knew well. Juliana, his classmate and first love from his youth. So young and already gone. "And where's your dad?" Anthony asked, looking around. "I only have a stepfather, and he didn't want to come with me. He has guests over. I ran away by myself." Anthony understood that any decent adult would be worried, but looking into the boy's eyes, he saw that his family relationship was far from good. "He won't worry," the boy said quietly. "He's with Zara. They're always hanging together, and he doesn't care about me. He said Zara is my new mum, but I don't want her. Zara is mean and doesn't love me at all." Anthony understood that he couldn't help the boy. It wasn't his place to interfere in someone else's family. The boy wasn't being mistreated, but the orphaned child felt like an outsider, unwanted by his stepfather and new wife. "What's your name?" Anthony asked. "Mama called me Sammy, but Zara doesn't call me that name," the boy replied, his eyes filling with tears. Anthony felt deeply sorry for the child. Though he was an adult, he also felt the acute loneliness of being alone in the world, understanding the boy's pain all too well. "I'm Anthony," he said gently. "I understand you, kid, even though I'm all grown up. I miss my parents too. I've lost everyone. I came here to visit them. It's easier for me, I'm my own master, but you should know your mum would be very upset if she knew you were wandering the cemetery alone. Come on, I'll walk you home. It's getting dark." Anthony escorted the boy safely and then headed straight to Sloane's place. After his conversation with the orphan, he yearned even more to create his own family and never be alone again, like Sam. On the way, he bought a beautiful bouquet of Sloane's favourite flowers. He imagined her usual excitement, asking him to take photos of her with the enormous bouquet and the ring on her finger. He knew he'd have to try hard to capture a photo she liked enough to post on social media, with the caption, "My love proposed to me. Guess what I said? Yes!" These thoughts warmed his heart, and a dreamy smile spread across his face. Arriving at Sloane's door, Anthony rang the bell. She opened it, but instead of her usual joyful squeals and kisses, she stepped out into the hallway, closing the door behind her. Her face was stern, making her look years older. "Anthony, this is not a good time," she said quietly, a hint of fear in her voice. "What do you mean?" "Look at these flowers. They're all for you, my love," Anthony replied, bewildered. Sloane's expression hardened. "I'm telling you, it's not a good time. We have a guest." "Who is it?" "I'm sure I won't bother them. I look decent enough, maybe they'll even like me," Anthony insisted, growing more anxious. "Anthony, please listen to me. I can't let you in today, and probably never again," Sloane said firmly. "What happened?" Anthony asked, his heart racing with worry. "I see you came with a purpose. Such gifts aren't without a reason, but I can't accept them. I don't want to lie to you anymore. I've met someone else," Sloane confessed. Anthony's heart seemed to stop. He felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under him, and he was falling into an endless abyss. "I wanted to propose to you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Anthony, we've talked about this before. I told you I wasn't ready. You know our situation. I'm tired of living impoverished. Dad's health is declining and Mum is always stressed and working. Craig can offer me so much more than you can. He's a businessman with a big company and a nice car. I told my parents about him and they wanted to meet him. He's here now," Sloane explained. "Let me meet him," Anthony demanded, trying to push his way into the apartment, but Sloane blocked the door with her back. "Don't do it, Anthony." "And what about your parents?" Anthony tried to object. "Anthony, we have no future together, and my parents understand that. You live in a rented apartment and earn little. Or did you think we would move to your parents' house in the village? Craig is independent and wealthy. He will help my parents and me pay for my education. I will transfer to a more prestigious university and study the speciality I've always dreamed of. You can't help me with that, Anthony. Let me go. Let me be happy." "Sloane, what happiness are you talking about? How can you say this? We love each other. We were going to get married." "That's what you wanted, Anthony, not me. Goodbye, Anthony. Don't call me, please. Don't bother me any more." She left, gently closing the door behind her. Anthony stared in bewilderment at the roses he still held. A wave of anger washed over him. He punched the wall with his other fist so hard that his knuckles bled. He threw the bouquet to the floor, turned around and left, leaving a bloody imprint of his fist on the wall near his now ex-girlfriend's apartment. She traded me for money. Fell for it. Of course, I'm just a worker. I can't afford trips abroad, fancy cars, or luxurious restaurants. But Sloane, how could you sell yourself like that? Like some cheap trinket? His phone beeped with an SMS from his best friend. He knew he was planning to propose to his girlfriend and sent a message, hoping to find out how it ended. "Let's meet at the bar near your place," he texted him. They talked almost until dawn. Anthony drowned his sorrow and anger in alcohol, while his loyal friend tried to comfort him and made sure nothing happened to him. "I'll go to her now, beat up that rich kid and wreck everything there." "Calm down, buddy. There's no rich kid there now. Everyone's asleep. You'll go to bed now and sleep. Tomorrow you can decide whom to hit and if it's even worth it." The next day, Anthony woke up and realized he didn't want to see Sloane, her parents, or their new son-in-law. He decided to leave them alone and let Sloane burn herself on the promising but false flame of feelings fueled by the thirst for money. Anthony simply lived and worked. Over time, he felt a strong desire to visit his parents' grave, talk to the silent listeners, pour out all his accumulated pain, and perhaps find solace. The cemetery was outside the city, not far from the village where Anthony grew up, where his parents' house still stood. He also took a couple of days off work, deciding to spend some time in the house where he spent his childhood, fix the roof, mend the fence, clean up the old garden, talk to friends and neighbours, breathe the clean air by the river, and perhaps find the desire to live and love again. At the cemetery, Anthony saw Tham again. The boy was clearly frightened and couldn't move from fear. "Hey, you're here again. Why do you look so scared? Did you see a ghost or something?" "Uncle Anthony, I saw my mum. She was like alive, walking past the cemetery. I came to visit her again. I picked some flowers for her by the house. She planted them last year when she was still alive. I turned my head and she was walking past me in a white dress. I wanted to call out to her, but I was too scared. She had a dog with her, just like our old dog, who disappeared when Mum died. I thought she was dead, but now they're walking together here." The poor kid's gone crazy from grief, Anthony thought. He's not thinking straight. Seeing his mother? Or maybe he really saw her ghost. What kind of nonsense is this? "Come with me, Tham. My house is nearby, and I've brought some food. Let's sit, eat, talk, and then we'll figure out what to do," Anthony suggested. The boy agreed, trustingly taking his hand as they walked. The house was dusty, but not dirty. Anthony wiped the table and seated Tham on a tall stool, reminiscent of his own childhood. The boy eagerly devoured the simple meal Anthony prepared, as if it were the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. "Eat up, and I'll go ask the neighbours some questions," Anthony said, patting the boy's head before stepping out. He decided to visit Mrs. Johnson, the village gossip. If anyone knew anything unusual happening in the village, it would be her. Mrs. Johnson? Anthony called, tapping on her window. It's been so long since I saw you, the elderly woman exclaimed, delighted to see him, and eager for city news and a chance to share her own. Do you know a boy named Sam? His mother, Juliana, passed away almost a year ago. He lives with his stepfather. Anthony inquired. I know Sam and his mother, Juliana. Rumour has it she was adopted, and her parents moved here to keep the adoption a secret. Mrs. Johnson revealed, her words pouring out like a machine gun. Wait, Aunt Mrs. Johnson, I need to know something. Have you seen Juliana since her death, or heard any rumours? Anthony asked. Mrs. Johnson paused, recalling a recent conversation. Old John said he saw her ghost near the old abandoned house by the cemetery. He sobered up instantly, but I thought he was just seeing things. That house has been empty for years. Anthony thanked Mrs. Johnson and decided to investigate the house where John claimed to have seen Juliana's ghost. Approaching the isolated house, he saw a tall, slender woman who resembled the late Juliana. A shaggy dog barked at him from the yard. The scene was far from ghostly. Hello, I was just passing. Have you lived here long? Anthony asked, approaching the gate. Hello, the woman replied, walking towards him. No, I was given this house just last week. An elderly woman used to live there, and it had been vacant. I'm a teacher, and this fall I'll be teaching at the local school. The chairman assigned me this empty house. And what is your name? Not Juliana by any chance? Anthony asked. The young woman laughed. Why does everyone think I'm Juliana? Yesterday, some drunk man was calling me Juliana from over the fence, and now you're asking. I'm Ada, not Juliana. It's good that you're not Juliana. There's a story here. You see, Ada, there was a girl in this village who looked just like you. People got scared because they think you're her, Juliana. She died last year. Oh, my goodness. I've been wondering why people have been avoiding me. Even the chairman insisted he'd seen me somewhere before. You know, Ada, Juliana and I were in the same class. I haven't seen Juliana in over 10 years, not since I moved to the city for school. But you really do look like her. It's uncanny. But tell me, please, where are you from? I came from far away. I have no family. I'm an orphan from a children's home. After finishing college, I worked in a kindergarten, and then I found a place here. They even promised me a housing. That's how I ended up here. I've never been here before. You know what I'll tell you? The young woman said, pausing for a moment before an idea struck her. I had a sister. When we were very young, we grew up together in an orphanage. I remember almost nothing about my father or mother, but I remember my twin sister. The caregivers often pitied me and said it was wrong to separate us. I was sick a lot as a child, so nobody wanted to adopt me, but a family took her. My nanny told me they took her to some city. Anthony looked at Ada, astonished by her resemblance to the deceased sister. There was no doubt. She was indeed not a stranger to Sam. Come with me, Anthony asked Ada. We need to calm down a very frightened boy. Anthony led Ada to his house and along the way told her about Juliana's son, the orphaned boy, and how he had mistaken her for his dead mother. Mum! Sam's face showed both joy and fear. He ran to Ada and looked into her face. She's not your mum, Sam. This is Ada, your mother's supposed twin sister. Probably your aunt. She came to the village and will teach children at school. Tears streamed down Sam's cheeks, and Ada couldn't hold back. She hugged the boy tightly and cried from the unbearable grief. All her life she had been alone and dreamed of finding her sister. But when she did, she found a little orphan as sick and unhappy as she once was. The three lonely people sat embracing for a long time, understanding each other without words. "I'll be here for you. If I can, I'll adopt you, my dear." Soon, a DNA test was conducted, which confirmed the kinship of Tham and Ada. With Anthony's support, the woman was able to get custody of the little boy, finally taking him away from his negligent stepfather. A year later, Anthony and Ada got married. Now they were a family and no longer felt so alone in this vast world. Talia finished filling out the daily logbook, reached over to click the button on the electric kettle, rose from her desk and approached the long unwashed window of the duty room. Beyond the glass, the autumn twilight was deepening, the sky was overcast, and it couldn't decide whether to pour another cold rain or finally stop being hard with the city below and its inhabitants. Talia looked sadly at the grey, heavy clouds and sighed. Another gloomy day, pressing down on her almost physically, and tomorrow would be the same, and the day after, many more days ahead. All her life she had considered her birth in this region a great misfortune, even a misunderstanding. She adored the sun, the blue sky and green foliage, but fate had condemned her to live in a land where, for half the year, she saw no colours but white and grey, and red, green and yellow existed only in the form of hats and mittens. Of the remaining 6 months after winter, half were filled with rain and slush, and the brief summer offered little chance to enjoy itself due to swarms of midges and mosquitoes. In short, Talia had always considered the climate of her homeland to be outright miserable, and besides the visual dreariness, she experienced a temperature shock every year. Here, the wind meant either frostbitten cheeks in winter, or in any other season, a ruined hairstyle in seconds. Though earlier, all this hadn't bothered Talia much. Perhaps she had been younger, or maybe the weather had worsened with each passing year. Who could tell? But lately her autumn melancholy had become unbearable, taking on a global scale. The woman shivered, and her thoughts took another way. Just as she feared, she had gained weight again, not just a little, but noticeably so. She had spent half a year torturing herself with diets and exercising daily, gasping and sweating, following the shouts of an online trainer, only to lose a couple of centimetres and then undo all her progress in just a few weeks. This meant that for the New Year's corporate party, she would have nothing to wear again, because she wouldn't be able to change anything about herself in the remaining months, and her conscience wouldn't allow her to buy a dress a size larger. She would go to the party in her old black pants and lie that she hadn't had time to change. Worries about her figure made her turn involuntarily and look at herself in the large mirror hanging by the entrance. And on top of all that, she had long needed to visit a hairdresser, do something about those grown-out roots, maybe even get a shorter cut to stop struggling with her hairstyle. But who needed her fancy hairdos and curls at work? Almost always she pinned her hair up in a bun, so all that salon beauty was pointless. Besides, it was better this way. She wouldn't attract unwanted attention. What was there to look at anyway? The dark circles under her eyes, the 3 deep furrows on her forehead, and her not-so-expressive eyes. The kettle boiled and announced it with a loud click, making her jump as usual. She glanced at herself in the mirror again, once more noting the less-than-pleasant sight, sat down at her desk and looked at her hands with some alarm. Here, too, things were not quite right. Her skin was also not in the best condition, dry and slightly cracked. And it wasn't even cold yet. For some reason, it was her hands that finally broke Talia. She well remembered her grandmother's words, who, for many years, had been her example of a true woman and a treasure trove of life wisdom. And what could be told from Talia's hands? from her unevenly trimmed nails, one of which was also broken, a couple of hangnails and reddened skin, that she was a disorganized, sloppy, worn-out woman who, judging by appearances, occasionally washed clothes in an ice hole. And she was a doctor. Her hands, if not perfect, should at least be in good condition. Coming to this simple realization, Talia shamefully hid her hands under the table and even looked around, as if someone in the empty duty room could overhear her thoughts and immediately judge her. The worse a girl's situation, the better she should look. Talia suddenly remembered another of her grandmother's sayings. Her grandmother undoubtedly had every right to utter these aphorisms, as she herself had always been living proof of their truth. Born in a small village, she had studied at university in the capital, where she had perfected her art of being a woman with a capital W. Talia's favourite pastime was looking through her grandmother's old photographs, which still held a faint, acrid scent of fixer, the chemicals used to develop them. The black and white images depicted the remarkable figures of young men and women from a bygone era. The young women were none the less graceful and beautiful in their long flowing dresses with collars and brooches. Even the ubiquitous light socks worn under their shoes or sandals did not detract from their charm. Their curly, voluminous hair was styled in coquettish updos, lips were always touched with lipstick, and the finest adornment was a wristwatch. The girls of the 50s looked attentively and responsibly into the camera, smiling with their eyes, lips, and faces. There were no unattractive or unappealing people in these photographs. Yes, we all tried to look our best, no matter what. We did it for ourselves. Talia's grandmother would nod, looking at her 50-year-old photo. She married an officer and moved with him to his hometown, a distant northern city. Here she gave birth to 3 children, a son who later became Talia's father, and 2 daughters. Throughout her life, Talia's grandmother maintained a style that set her apart from everyone else, a style that could perhaps be called chic. Her hats with small veils, which she stubbornly wore despite the sideways glances, even in the harsh frosts, were legendary. Until her old age, she did her own manicures, painstakingly inserting her arthritis-swollen fingers into the small scissor holes, and carefully styled her thin, downy hair into neat curls. "I would even draw on eyeliner," she would joke, "but I'm afraid I'd miss and poke myself in the eye." And so, the worse a woman's situation, the better she should look. Talia reminded herself of her grandmother's wisdom. But her own situation was far from ideal, and she probably looked as bad as she felt. What a shame, Talia suddenly thought. What's wrong with me? Why am I so irritated by everything? The weather, my clothes, myself, even this miserable kettle. What's happening to me? Why have I become such a grumbler and a bore? Why have I let myself go, both inside and out? I used to be different, and the world around me was brighter, happier, simpler. I remember. Not getting an answer from outside, she settled more comfortably in her chair, closed her eyes, and lost herself in thought. So, in a few months she would turn 32. A lot? Yes, quite a bit. As they say, a good reason to take stock of things. What did Talia Thompson represent? Despite today's unpleasant self-inspection, she was a young woman of quite pleasant appearance, because everything she had noticed wrong could be fixed. She was not unintelligent, had a good sense of humour and healthy self-irony, and, according to many, including those knowledgeable in such matters, she was a competent and talented doctor. Rumour had it she even had a chance to become the deputy head of the therapeutic department next year. Given the status of their hospital and the size of the department, this was quite an achievement for such a young specialist. She had many friends, real ones, tested by time, and even a bosom friend, tested not only by time but also by deeds. Fiona had been there when things were tough, not just for Talia, but for herself as well. And finally, until recently, Talia could have considered herself successful in her family life. She paused at that thought. Interestingly, the word successful came to mind, so official and formal, instead of happy. Yes, she might not look her best, be dissatisfied with the weather, her weight, the Minister of Health, high food prices, and who knows what else. But in her life, there was the most important thing. She was happy with her husband. Why couldn't she say that, even to herself, sitting alone in the duty room? Perhaps because she wasn't happy. Talia fearfully pressed her palms to her lips. Well, there it was, the truth she had been avoiding. But it was nonsense. She and George had been together for 5 years, with arguments and quarrels. But who didn't have those? Her friend Fiona had broken up with her husband at least 5 times, even filing for divorce once, and yet they were still together, soon to celebrate a decade of shared struggles. George, Talia's husband, was a wonderful person. George was impeccably honest, principled, caring, and an outstanding, highly valued professional in every sense. He was meticulous, reliable, polite, and punctual, incredibly punctual. As Talia repeated the last word to herself, she shuddered. It sounded more like a job reference than a description of a beloved partner. She felt tempted to add, "He enjoys the well-deserved respect of his spouse." It all seemed strange and foolish, because none of the qualities she associated with George related to happiness or love. Well, of course, George had never been a carefree jokester, scattering belongings around the house or money to the wind. He was serious, a defining trait of his character, approaching everything from his life's work to decorating the Christmas tree with the same gravity. His courtship of Talia was equally serious and thorough. "Talia," he explained a year into their relationship, "I'm not a boy, my character is far from sweet, but I love you deeply, and I will do everything to make you happy. Will you be my wife?" Unexpectedly he added, "If I were you, I wouldn't marry me." It was perhaps the first joke she had heard from him, and it left her astonished, yet unwavering in her love for him. For 4.5 years, Talia was happy with George. Though their life lacked daily bouquets of flowers, dedicated songs, or trips to the ocean, she felt content. They shared a love for the same films, scents, and days of the week, and both disliked tomatoes, tobacco smoke, and their neighbour. Their routines were synchronized, from waking up in the morning to yawning together in the evenings. Talia could buy him clothes without trying them on, and he would always choose the ripest fruits she loved. He playfully teased her about her efforts to lose weight, and she laughed at his subscription to a hunting magazine. Yet a shadow gradually crept into their life. Over the past couple of months, George had changed, becoming withdrawn and sullen. He lost weight, his clothes hung loosely, and he wore long-sleeved shirts even at home, as if constantly cold. "George, what's wrong?" Talia asked. "Are you feeling unwell? Let's get you checked out. I don't like how you look." "Stop it," he brushed her off. "I'm just under a lot of stress at work. We're finalising huge projects, and as usual, last-minute issues are piling up. Everything's falling apart, and so am I. Just bear with me. Everything will sort itself out, and we'll get paid well. I'll finish the project, get the money, and we'll go somewhere sunny, with palms and sand, like you always dreamed." Talia tried to initiate a heart-to-heart conversation. "George, don't you think something's wrong with us? Maybe it's time to think about having a child. We've been married for 4 years, and you've always wanted a daughter. Maybe it's time." "Talia, this isn't the best time for that," he replied. "I'm sorry, but I can't think about it right now." He seemed to force the words out as if reluctant to speak them. "So you don't have time for a child, or for me?" Talia asked, confused. "I don't know. I'm not sure," George muttered. Talia was genuinely frightened. For him, for herself, and for their future. She retreated, thinking perhaps he was just in a bad mood, and she was adding to his stress. George, who had never left her alone for more than a day, began taking 2 or 3 day trips. He returned from these trips exhausted and haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. "George, what's going on?" Talia demanded, cornering him.
"You know, Talia, I've been thinking. It seems maybe we need to separate," George said, avoiding her gaze.
"Separate?" Talia gasped. "Are you serious?"
"Yes. No, I don't know. I'm sorry,"
he said, slamming the door as he left. Later, he returned with flowers, apologizing and embracing her. He explained that he was an idiot, exhausted and overwhelmed, but still loved her deeply. Talia wanted to believe him, but an ominous shadow hung over them. Talia decided that the root of her current unhappiness lay in George and the growing gloom of their life together. The recognition was painful, but she knew something had to change. Talia's thoughts were interrupted as she noticed the darkness outside the duty room window, with raindrops streaking the window. Winter was postponed after all. She could pour herself some tea before it got completely cold, she thought, and then froze. With the inner sense of an experienced on-call doctor, Talia infallibly detected a change in the room's atmosphere. It was as if the air had suddenly thickened. She opened her eyes slightly and straightened up in her chair. Just as she thought, her intuition hadn't failed her. Someone was running down the corridor. What could have happened? She quickly reviewed the serious and moderately serious patients in the ward. Several chronic asthma cases, 3 acute intoxications, a couple of ulcers. There shouldn't be any problems with them. At this moment, a junior nurse burst into the duty room. The young woman, already dishevelled from her constant fussing, now looked like a passenger who had missed her train and ran after it for a couple of stations. Her hair was standing on end, her face was flushed, a mask dangled from one ear. Overall, she looked as if their hospital was about to be urgently evacuated to another planet, and she had just been told.
"What happened?"
Talia assumed a stern, authoritative demeanour, trying to calm the nurse immediately. "What's with all the running around the ward? There's a phone at the nurse's station. And what's with your appearance?"
"Dr. Thompson," the nurse said, breathing heavily, "your husband is in the emergency room. He was in an accident. He's all covered in blood, and it's horrible to look at him."
Talia jumped to her feet, swayed, and nearly fell to the floor. A wave of nausea washed over her. Her head spun, and her mouth instantly went dry.
"Oh, God, George, how could this happen?" "Oh, he's not so bad off. They've already bandaged him up, and he even called on the phone. But the little girl, the daughter, she's in terrible shape. Her leg is broken and she's all bruised and scraped. I heard them calling the resuscitation team to send a brigade. Oh, Dr. Thompson!"
Talia looked at the nurse, who was clearly distressed. "Daughter? What daughter? Whose?"
"Your daughter. The girl was with him, with the man. He said she was his daughter. He kept repeating, 'Daughter, daughter.' And the man is your husband. Thompson, I'm sure of it. I saw his name in the admission card. And the emergency room duty doctor said it out loud. And I know your husband's face. I've seen him several times. Remember when he picked you up from work? You even introduced us."
Talia instantly recalled the incident. The girl had indeed gotten tangled in their feet as she left the hospital, and smiled so broadly that Talia had no choice but to introduce them. George had nodded politely and probably forgotten about the eager nurse within 5 minutes, but the introduction had clearly made a lasting impression on Mabel. The next day she greeted Talia with a wide smile and the words, "Dr. Thompson, your husband is so handsome and such a real man." "He is so well-groomed," serious and dignified, while she ties her ponytail at the nape and dashed through the wards like a schoolgirl. You wouldn't guess she was a doctor, not one of the nurses. Upon seeing Talia, the nurses' discussion club scattered with extremely busy and preoccupied faces, while red-faced Mabel froze in place. Talia had to remind her of the duties of a nurse in the therapeutic department and advise her to keep her mouth shut. And now she said that George was downstairs in the admissions department, covered in blood. However, the girl's words should be taken with a grain of salt or even less, but she does know George by sight and is unlikely to have mistaken him. And then she says she saw his name in the documents. Of course, his surname are far from rare, and all sorts of coincidences happen in the world, but this seems too much for one time. The most absurd thing, though, is the talk of some daughter who is with him. That is definitely nonsense. All this flashed through Talia's mind as she ran through the endless corridors and staircases of the large hospital, where not only casual visitors and patients, but also the medical staff themselves, who had worked there for years, would get lost. The distance from the therapy department to the admissions department was indeed considerable and indirect, and during the journey a multitude of thoughts rushed through Talia's mind. One of them suddenly made her stop abruptly, gasp in fright, and clutch the conveniently located windowsill, feeling dizzy again. What if it really was George, her husband George, and he was with his daughter? After all, they had no daughter. It didn't mean he couldn't have one. Talia caught her breath and ran on. In the large, bright reception room of the hospital, a male figure sat motionless on a bench by the wall. The man was intently staring at one spot and seemed completely detached. Talia's heart sank. The man sitting on the hospital window was George. It was his dark hair, slightly receding at the temples, his prominent nose with a slight bump, and his chin with a noticeable dimple. Well, all that remained was to approach him and ask with which daughter he had arrived. Talia cautiously approached the man, who continued to look motionless on the couch, resembling a statue, and only when there were literally a couple of steps between them did Talia suddenly sigh with relief and almost laugh. It was not George. She was certain she had never seen the man sitting before her in her life. But damn, how much he resembled George. It was remarkable. No wonder that fool Mabel mistook him for Talia's husband. Even she herself thought for a few seconds that it was George. The resemblance was striking. Similar facial features, the same hair, eyes of the same colour, brown with a slight greenish fleck, and even the shape of the eyebrows. The only significant difference was in their expressions. Even now, in what was clearly not the easiest or happiest moment of his life, the corners of the stranger's mouth were slightly upturned, as if he was smiling with hope and faith in better times. George's lips, on the other hand, had been tightly pursed lately, with no trace of a smile. And their eyes were different. The stranger's gaze was warm, while George's could sometimes pierce like a corkscrew. Perhaps this was why the man in the reception room seemed like a kind and sincere person, possessing qualities she had missed in her loved one lately. But the physical resemblance was still astonishing. Talia looked at the man with interest once more. What was the nurse saying about his last name? That he was also Thompson? Quite an interesting coincidence. "Excuse me," she addressed the man. "Is your surname really Thompson?" Her words had an unusual effect. Perhaps it was simply a reaction to a human voice, to someone's presence nearby. The man sobbed, leaned forward, grabbed Talia's hand, and, burying his face in her sleeve, burst into tears. Loudly and violently. Completely at a loss, Talia stood beside the weeping man, looking at him in fright. Finally the sounds grew softer. He stopped shaking and gently released Talia's hand, which he had been clutching tightly during his outburst of despair. Finally, he sniffled one last time, wiping his face with a handkerchief, gave a pitiful, embarrassed smile. Once again, Talia was struck by how kind and open his face was, despite the red eyes, swollen nose and trembling lips.
"Please forgive me. I'm sorry,"
he mumbled, sitting next to Talia.
"I shouldn't have, and I didn't want to. It's just that Camilla was taken away, and no one is saying anything, and I've been waiting and waiting."
"Camilla is—" Talia prompted.
"My daughter," he quickly nodded. "I can't imagine how this happened. I just can't figure it out. And there was no one around. The street was empty. Where did he come from? And at such speed? How could this happen? What will happen now?"
"Did you get hit by a car?" Talia deduced from his disjointed thoughts.
"Yes," he nodded again. "I was just thrown to the side, but Camilla—"
His voice trailed off, and all that came out was a painful wheeze. Talia stood up and walked to the internal phone at the reception desk. "Hi, Geoffrey," Talia decisively interrupted the doctor's jokes. "You took a little girl from the emergency room about 20 minutes ago after a car accident." "Yes, we did," Geoffrey confirmed. "But she's not a little girl. She's quite a grown child, 17 years old." "So, she's quite adult, and here I was thinking of a little girl with bows in her hair," Talia thought. "And this man is obviously older than George, although George had been looking worn out lately and seemed to have aged visibly." "So, how is she, the girl?" Talia asked, feeling a strange anxiety, even though it seemed like none of her business to worry about complete strangers. A doctor can't afford to get too emotionally involved with every patient. Otherwise, they simply wouldn't have the strength or emotional resilience. Yet in this case, she wanted to ease the man's burden of worry. "Well, how can I put it?" Geoffrey replied. "There's nothing too serious. We suspected internal organ ruptures, and she was unconscious for a while, but now she's stable. She's conscious, though her eyes are a bit unfocused, but that will pass. She's answering questions coherently and keeps asking for water. As for minor injuries, she has severe bruising. She'll be with us for a bit, and then off to the trauma ward. Hey, why are you so worried? Do you know her?" "Oh, no, Geoffrey. We're complete strangers. There are plenty of Thompsons in the world." Talia smiled. "All right, Geoffrey. Have a quiet shift. Bye." She hung up the phone and turned to the man. He had been staring at her back the entire time, as if she held all his hopes. She felt a pang of guilt for chatting with Geoffrey on the phone instead of immediately reassuring the man. "Everything is fine. Don't worry," she smiled, approaching him again. "Your daughter is conscious. Her condition is stable, and tomorrow she'll be transferred to the trauma ward. You should come tomorrow, talk to her doctor, but for today, it's best if you go home, rest, and calm down."
"Thank you so much. I don't know how to thank you," he exclaimed.
"Oh, it's nothing," Talia smiled. "Besides, in a way, we're almost relatives. Well, not directly, of course," she hastily explained. "We just share the same last name, Thompson. But that's the most surprising part. You look very much like my husband, George. In fact, you're almost identical. That's why I'm here. A nurse rushed into my room, shouting that my husband had been brought to the emergency room, and with a daughter no less. Can you imagine my shock after such coincidences?" Talia laughed, but stopped when she saw the man looking at her intently and seriously. "Tell me, what is his name?" he asked. "Your husband, is he by any chance named George? He's 32 years old, an engineer, and does he have a mole right here?" The man pointed to his elbow. Now it was Talia's turn to sit down on the bench, her legs suddenly feeling like jelly. "It seems everything is true." The man cautiously sat down next to her. "You see, dear doctor, it appears this is not a coincidence. Your husband and me, well, we're brothers. Half-brothers.
I believe, though I'm not sure. I always get confused with family terms. We share the same father. And allow me to introduce myself. I am Ryan Thompson. I am almost 7 years older than George." Talia looked at the man in shock. If not for the belated thought that she was at work on a 24-hour shift with an entire department under her care, she might have sat there for a long time, trying to regain her composure. But the thought of her abandoned duties forced her to get to her senses. She jumped up, energetically straightened her white uniform, and felt as if, during all this running around, worry and shock, she had even lost a bit of weight. "Honestly, I don't know what to say. I need to think, to calm down. The important thing is to get back to work. "I will be here tomorrow, of course," Ryan smiled, and again she was struck by how kind and open his face was. "If you like, I'm willing to tell you everything I know. And perhaps you can help me again, dear doctor, but in a different manner," he added mysteriously. Talia no longer had time to find out what he meant. She nodded, handed him a piece of paper with her hastily scribbled phone number, and rushed into the corridor. For the rest of her shift, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the emergency room. The man who claimed to be George's brother, whom she had no reason to doubt, stood before her eyes. However, Talia knew almost nothing about George's past. He didn't like to discuss his childhood and youth, jokingly saying he was born an old man. His mother had passed away 2 years before he met Talia, and he claimed not to remember his father, saying he left when George was about 5. "Don't you remember anything?" Talia would ask. She believed she remembered herself almost from infancy, and was furious when her parents laughed at her made-up stories about her early childhood. "I don't remember anything about him. And Talia, let's drop the subject. It's pointless. Father? This man never meant anything to me, and he means nothing now. Frankly, I don't even know if he's alive. End of discussion." His face would twitch, as if the very word father caused him physical pain. Talia had grown accustomed to seeing George as a man without a past. Even at their wedding, against her large contingent of relatives and family friends, he only invited his 3 classmates. "Talia, I'm probably not an excellent person. That's why I'm alone. But now I have you, so I must become better, right?" George would joke half-heartedly. And now she meets a man who claims to be George's brother. Incredible! Of course she would meet this man, and perhaps after this meeting she would begin to understand George better, and maybe she could do something to save their relationship, because she loved George. She realized this clearly and distinctly when, after hearing that he was injured and admitted to the emergency room, she was overcome with a terrible longing and fear of losing him. Ryan Thompson called her in the morning, and they arranged to meet in a small, cosy pizzeria near the hospital. After handing over her shift and changing clothes, Talia rushed to the appointed place, burning with impatience and curiosity. Rushing into the pizzeria, Talia immediately spotted Ryan Thompson. Upon seeing her, he stood up, waved hello, and smiled joyfully. Again, she was struck by his uncanny resemblance to her husband, only his face was kinder. "And he seems like a good person overall," Talia thought confidently, watching as a huge, steaming pizza with still slightly bubbling cheese was placed before her at Ryan's signal. "So, tell me the whole story, but keep in mind, I still don't entirely believe you," Talia said with an encouraging smile. "Well, I don't entirely believe myself yet," the man smiled in response. "You see, Talia, I had already given up on this story, accepted it, retreated, decided I had made enough attempts to fix things, to get closer to George. But maybe now, with your help, George will understand." It was clear that the man pronounced his brother's name with great caution, as if getting used to the sound of it. "You tried?" Talia asked in amazement. You see, Ryan, I know nothing, absolutely nothing. Until last night, I didn't even suspect your existence. George never discussed his family, and we got used to thinking of him as a lonely person who found it painful to remember his past. Perhaps in many ways that's true, Talia. The man suddenly fell silent, as if pondering his next words. And I'm doubting now whether I have the right to tell you everything. You do, Talia assured him. You see, Ryan, I don't like these secretive mysteries. There's been too much uncertainty around me lately, and I don't want it to cost me my marriage with George. Maybe if I learn about his past, I can understand what to do in the present. What do you think? Maybe, Ryan said thoughtfully. You know that this will be more of a story about our father and me than about George. Fernando Thompson was a handsome, quite talented and carefree young man, a typical offspring of a well-off, prosperous family. He was an only child to his parents, so naturally he received all their love and care. As a result, he grew up rather spoiled. Yet, despite his family's indulgence, he managed to form a decent sense of right and wrong, and never felt entitled to everything around him. He graduated from a school with a focus on physics and mathematics, and enrolled in a technical university, living the carefree student life, punctuated by exam sessions. Being well off, he didn't have to worry about part-time jobs, housing, or buying a car. However, his fellow student, named Camilla, struggled with these issues constantly. She came from somewhere far away. Fernando didn't even know the place. She was an attractive brunette who made Fernando study the map more closely. As a confident and handsome young man, the star of their class, he naturally caught her eye. How it happened, neither of them fully understood. In their 5th year, they felt grown up and independent, believing no one could tell them how to live. But a student party that turned into a shared night, followed by suspicions, fear, anxious waiting, and finally the certainty of Camilla's pregnancy, happened too soon for them, despite their perceived maturity. They panicked, said hurtful things to each other, and went their separate ways. Fernando came to his senses first. "Camilla, I'm ready to take responsibility for you and our child. Let's get married," he suggested. "Go away and never show your face to me again," the girl replied bitterly. "And the child?" Fernando asked. "There will be no child," she said, leaving the university and returning home. A couple of years later, Fernando learned that Camilla had given birth to a boy, his son Ryan. It was me. He tried to mend their broken lives, but they were too different and accidental for each other to succeed. With his parents' help, Fernando secured an apartment for Camilla so she could return to the city and allow him to be closer to his son. Ryan grew up not minding that his father didn't live with them, but visited often. Over the years, Camilla softened and stopped blaming Fernando for her ruined life, at least in front of Ryan. Then Fernando fell deeply in love with Magnolia, and they married. Within half a year they had a son, George, and everything seemed perfect until life reminded Fernando of a simple truth. You can't build anything on deceit, even if it's innocent. Naturally timid, Fernando was terrified to tell Magnolia about his other child, and juggled 2 families for years, intending to confess but always backing out at the last moment. Magnolia found out the truth herself and didn't forgive him. Once again, Fernando was cursed. But while Camilla eventually understood him, Magnolia couldn't. She threw him out, divorced him, and raised George to believe his father was a despicable liar. This upbringing bore fruit, but along with his father, George grew to resent his brother, whom he had never even seen. After all, it was this other son who ultimately took his father away from him. At least, that's what I think he believed. Ryan said with a sad smile, finishing his story. "Personally, I'm not to blame for any of this. I tried to meet George several times, but, well, I won't repeat the words he used to refuse me. But that's not relevant, Talia. What matters is that you're here, and maybe you can help us. This isn't right. It shouldn't be this way. Dad died 3 years ago, having lived what he considered a foolish life, and he desperately wanted me to make peace with George. He said something interesting before he passed away, a phrase I'll never forget. He said I should try to piece together something worthwhile from the shards he had shattered. Saying this, Ryan smiled bitterly. Returning home, Talia, quiet and thoughtful, kept replaying her conversation with Ryan Thompson in her mind, or rather, his story about George's family. Although, what family could it be if George himself never considered Ryan as his relative and, as it turned out, stubbornly refused his half-brother's attempts to mend their relationship? What is it like to live knowing that you have close relatives, someone related by blood and very similar to you, and yet be completely alone? No, of course, George is not entirely alone in the world. He has Talia, but that's different. The woman tried to imagine what it would be like if her parents, her younger brother Dan, who had caused her so much trouble in her childhood, and her beloved grandmother, suddenly disappeared from her life. It's impossible to live without family. Of course, her situation and George's were entirely different. She grew up in a complete family, while he only had his mother. That's how life turned out. But now he has the chance to fix, if not everything, then at least a part of it, and to feel the presence of a truly close person by his side. It's an incomparable feeling. Perhaps this is precisely what George needs to emerge from his gloomy state, stop frowning and finally smile. George, we need to talk seriously. Talia decided to go straight to the point, without delaying the conversation. I found your brother. Well, not exactly found. He showed up. Completely by chance. Can you imagine? Talia stopped and fell silent because the look George gave her was too heavy and gloomy, even for him. I ask you, he said, his voice tense, please never mention this person to me again. But why? Talia exclaimed. Listen, George, I really met him by chance. But maybe it's fate. Damn it, I only spoke with him briefly, but even in those few minutes, I could tell he's an excellent person and genuinely wants you to reconcile. I didn't quarrel with him, George said calmly, but the tension remained in every word. I didn't quarrel, and I don't intend to reconcile, and I don't want to communicate with him. I need nothing from this person. He means nothing to me. I don't want to see him, later or ever, no matter how little time I have left. George's words, which escaped him unintentionally, seemed to hang in the air. It felt as if they were almost visible, looming between them, heavy and threatening, to crash down with a deafening roar. Talia took a deep breath and said, What do you mean, no matter how little time you have left? What does that mean? What's wrong with you? Tell me the truth, I beg you. George looked at his wife with fear. His face clearly showed a desire to take back the words that had slipped out. And there was also a look of utter exhaustion and confusion. He couldn't hold back any longer, as if the armour that had constrained him for weeks and months had finally cracked. George slumped heavily onto the couch and waved his hand. All right, you'll find out anyway. You're a doctor. How can I hide this from you? And it's getting harder to hide with each passing day, George said bitterly, and took her hand. A few minutes later, Talia sat with a look of shock and disbelief, her eyes wide and her breath coming in gasps. Her first thought was to go to the health committee and ask them to annul her medical diploma, as it had been issued to a complete idiot who didn't deserve to be called a doctor.
How could she not have seen it all? The sudden weight loss, the chills, the fatigue, the bruises he hid under his sleeves. What more needed to happen for her to notice that her loved one was seriously ill? "Is that why you reacted so strangely to my words about having a child?" she asked, regaining some composure. "And those sudden thoughts about divorce, George, were they your way of getting rid of me before it's too late? Do you think I'll enjoy you sitting by my side when I am completely bedridden?" George struggled to find the right words. After all, no one knows how long this will last. They say it could be months, maybe even years, but the end is inevitable, and each day will only get worse and harder for everyone. Why should I watch you waste your life? "Honey, maybe you'll let me decide how to spend my own life. You know, George, I always knew you weren't the most cheerful person in the world, but I never realized you were such a selfish egoist. 30 years on this earth, in your proud solitude, and you've decided to go out the same way. Oh no, my dear, absolutely not. Please, give me all your papers. The conclusions, test results, everything you have," she asked George, trying not to show her shock. She then sat alone in the kitchen with a thick stack of papers and scans, looking at them through tears. Finally, she angrily wiped them away, dried her wet cheeks, read the next form, and froze in despair again. George had been diagnosed with a blood disease 3 months ago. Unfortunately, it was quite late when more radical treatment methods were required, and with each passing day, despite the treatment, it became increasingly difficult for him to conceal his worsening condition from Talia, as he travelled to another city for the treatment. "So, that's what these business trips were about," Talia thought bitterly as she dialed the number of George's doctor. Soon she knew what the medical documents couldn't tell her. George urgently needed a bone marrow transplant, but they couldn't find a suitable donor. And overall, Dr. Thompson's colleague sighed over the phone. "You know how it is with donations, especially bone marrow. People are extremely reluctant to come forward. Everyone is afraid, thinking it's very dangerous and painful. Try convincing someone otherwise. And out of those who do come forward, we reject more than half as unsuitable. We have very little of the needed material. But even from what we have, nothing is suitable for your husband. Complete incompatibility. And we don't have much time, so I'm sorry." "Yes, I understand," Talia said, regaining her composure. "Listen, Ivan, the best donors of stem cells are relatives, right?" "Yes, of course. People with a familial connection have high histocompatibility. In most cases, relatives are the best option for transplantation, but George doesn't have any close relatives, as far as I know. At least that's what he said." "Well, we'll see about that," Talia replied. "Thank you. I'll call back later." "Ryan, I'm sorry, but we need to meet urgently. Right away. Can we meet at the same place if it's convenient for you?" she said quickly into the phone. "Of course. Should I order the same pizza?" she heard in response, a calm voice with an audible smile. And despite the tragedy of the situation, the horror of what she had learned and seen, she couldn't help but smile in return. And for some reason she felt reassured. She suddenly felt confident that everything would be all right. Ryan didn't hesitate for a second. "Talia, I'm ready. I don't know if I'm suitable, but I'm practically healthy. At least, healthier than many of my peers. And if I'm found suitable, I... His voice broke. There was no need to say or explain anything more. Talia and Ryan sat across from each other in silence, completely forgetting about the cooling pizza on the table between them. The biomaterial taken from Ryan was a perfect match for George. And, a few weeks later, he underwent a bone marrow transplant. After the operation, the patient recovered quickly, surprisingly quickly. Within a couple of weeks he began to smile again, no longer frightening those around him with his gaunt appearance. "Talia,
dear." He took his wife's hand and pressed it to his lips. "The operation, the transplant, the therapy, all of that is important. But it was you who saved me. After that conversation, when you got the truth out of me, I suddenly wanted to live again. Understand? I realized, here's my Talia scolding me, upset that I decided to give up. But I love her. How can I leave her alone? She won't survive without me. Talia, I owe you my life." "Of course you do. And please never forget it," she nodded. "But listen, we need to talk. You see, your recovery is thanks to another person, even more so than me. George. He saved you. And before you start acting like an old grouch again, please think. In short, the bone marrow transplant saved you, and the only suitable donor was Ryan Thompson, your half-brother. And let me emphasize, before you start your old routine, he volunteered without a second thought, even though there were some contraindications for him. Understand? There was a risk, but he insisted. And here you are alive, almost healthy, and even starting to look rosy again. And surprisingly, you haven't said a single bad word about your brother. And you never will again. Right, George?" George looked at Talia, nodded, and began to cry. Silently, almost without tears. Perhaps that's how men cry, when they finally realize their mistakes and understand that they can be corrected, at least partially. A year later, Talia and George were choosing a gift for Ryan Thompson. His 40th birthday was approaching in a few days, although he jokingly refused to celebrate, claiming that such a date shouldn't be celebrated if you wish the birthday person well. "Ryan, you're something else." George shook his head. "Your hair is already greying. Your daughter is 18, and you believe in old wives' tales like an old woman. You don't have to celebrate your birthday, but I will. It will be my first time celebrating my brother's birthday." George blushed and lowered his head. Ryan looked at Talia, winked at her, approached George and embraced him. And Talia couldn't help but admire the two strong, handsome and manly men. Entirely different, yet remarkably similar, and, most importantly, brothers. "You know, Talia, this whole story taught me one simple truth," George said, looking at his wife with tenderness. "What's that?" "I've been resentful and angry all my life. At my father, my brother, my mother, even at myself. And what did I get in the end? I almost lost everything. My family, you, life, and the truth is this. It's foolish to waste life on regrets and resentment. You'll only end up the loser."
"Oh, Delia, I envy you. What a catch you've got yourself. You're the luckiest bride," her old school friend exclaimed. "Thank you, Sloane. I've waited so long for this happiness," Delia replied, feeling she had truly earned her joy. Delia's childhood was grey and monotonous. She had no father, and she lived with her mother and stepfather. For a long time, little Delia couldn't understand why their home was always filled with parties and the smell of alcohol. The secret was revealed quickly. Her grandmother visited one day, saw the mess and pronounced, "They're alcoholics, dear, real alcoholics." She then took Delia's things and left with her granddaughter. From then on, Delia rarely saw her mother, except when she came begging for money to cure her hangover. School years left a bitter taste in Delia's soul. Being from a poor family, she couldn't escape the whispers and ridicule, no matter how well she did in her studies or extracurricular activities. "Look, there's Delia. Do you think she drinks with her parents, or is just about to start?" the girls in her class would whisper. Delia didn't know how to respond. It wasn't her fault. Her only real friend was Sloane, who understood her without many words, likely because she faced similar struggles at home. Delia did have a prom, but her dress was rented, and her shoes were far from Cinderella's glass slippers. It wasn't the prettiest outfit, but it was all she had. After high school, Delia attended college. By then, her grandmother had passed away from heartache over her daughter's behaviour, leaving Delia with fond memories. Now, Delia was an orphan with living parents. She met Stephen during their final year of college, while interning at a factory, where they both ended up working after graduation. Their romance blossomed quickly. Stephen was charming, bringing her flowers, gifts and romantic dinners, easily winning her heart. Delia was naturally modest, with beautiful long chestnut hair and slightly sad but captivating grey eyes. Stephen was smitten and proudly introduced her as his fiancée. "Son, maybe you should wait with the wedding," his mother suggested. "Mum, I love her, and she's a good girl. Why wait?" Stephen replied, puzzled. "Because, son, by marrying this pauper, you're aligning yourself with her alcoholic parents. I've done my research and know all about her family," his mother retorted. Despite his parents' warnings and disapproval, Stephen followed his heart. He proposed to Delia, knowing she would say yes. The wedding was beautiful because Stephen's parents spared no expense on the celebration. "I'm so happy, darling," Delia whispered to Stephen. He looked at her with the same joy, sweeping her up and dancing across the floor. The young couple loved each other deeply, savouring every moment together. 3 years of marriage only strengthened their bond, and the future seemed bright and full of promise. But everything changed on that fateful day when, at Stephen's insistence, they decided to spend the Christmas holidays at a ski resort. Delia was terrified of skiing. "Darling, may I just watch or build a snowman?" she joked, but Stephen had other plans. "Sweetheart, you need to face your fears. Just try it at least once." Reluctantly, Delia agreed. The ski slope was far too advanced for a beginner, but Stephen was confident she could handle it. From her first push-off, Delia knew she would fall. Struggling to maintain her balance, she tried to control her movements, but the steep slope was too much. She tumbled down, unable to stop, until she finally came to a halt at the bottom, feeling a searing pain in her back that left her immobile. "Delia, what happened?" Stephen asked, frightened. She could only breathe heavily, her heart pounding. She knew something terrible had occurred. At the trauma ward, they discovered Delia had a compression fracture of the lumbar spine. The doctors avoided her gaze, delaying the inevitable until her discharge. "She likely won't walk again. I am sorry," the department head told Stephen. Delia understood her prognosis. Stephen seemed distant and preoccupied, as if lost in thought. Little did she know that his mother had already intervened, poisoning his mind against her. "See, Stephen, everything turned out just as I told you," his mother said, emphasizing her last words. "You don't need this marriage. She'll only tie you down. Remember, son, you need to focus on your career, not on helping invalids." Her persistent words wore down Stephen's resolve. He filed for divorce and evicted Delia from his apartment. The young woman was devastated, feeling as though she were living in a nightmare. "You can stay in the dormitory for now," Stephen said as he left, vanishing as if their 3 happy years together had never existed. Delia was left to weep bitterly. The dormitory, lacking a ramp, was unbearable for Delia. She fell on the stairs a couple of times, injuring her face and hands. Since then, she rarely left her room, sinking into a deep depression as she sat in her wheelchair, staring blankly for hours and crying silently. Tears streamed down her beautiful face, but she didn't care. Unexpectedly, Delia's only friend Sloane pulled her out of this despair. She took Delia to her place to shake her out of her stupor. "Enough moping, Delia," Sloane said. "Tears won't solve anything. Look at you, you're so pale. Let's start with a walk in the park." It was spring, and the warm sunshine revived Delia's spirits. She felt like the Snow Queen from a fairy tale, thawing under the sun's gentle touch. The chirping sparrows in the maple and elm trees, the pigeons bathing in a puddle, and even the passing strangers seemed like close family to her. From then on, Delia spent most of her days in the park. One day, she witnessed a dramatic scene unfolding before her. A pack of stray dogs had cornered an emaciated golden retriever by the dumpsters, intending to tear it apart. Delia's heart raced, and she couldn't hold back her emotions. She steered her wheelchair straight into the hostile pack. Startled, the dogs scattered in all directions, leaving only the injured shepherd behind. Its side was blooded, and it limped on one paw. Startled, the dogs scattered in all directions, leaving only the injured retriever behind. Its side was blooded, and it limped on one paw. "What did you do to deserve this?" Delia asked softly. The dog tilted its head, listening, and after a moment let out a soft bark as if agreeing with her. "You're so smart. Can you please give me your paw?" she joked. To her surprise, the dog lifted its right paw and placed it on the woman's knee. "You're quite the gentleman," Delia laughed as the dog licked her hand. She hadn't felt this happy in a long time. As she tended to the dog's wounds, she forgot about her own condition and enjoyed the moment. The dog was well-mannered and intelligent, not at all like a stray. Delia knew she would take him home with her. Sloane also loved animals, so she wouldn't mind. "I'll call you Rocky," Delia said, and the dog barked in agreement, its kind eyes gleaming. "All right, Rocky, let's go home," she said, starting to wheel herself forward. Rocky pushed the wheelchair from behind, skillfully navigating the path. When they reached their apartment building, Rocky stood on his hind legs and pressed the elevator button with his nose. Delia was impressed by his intelligence and city savvy. Inside the apartment, Rocky behaved calmly, curling up in the hallway. "He's so well behaved," Sloane exclaimed. "You've found yourself a loyal friend, Delia." After treating Rocky's wounds and feeding him, they went to bed. Rocky slept lightly, his ears twitching at every sound outside the door. The next morning, Sloane woke up first and began singing softly in the bathroom. Suddenly, she heard someone joining in. She continued singing and realized it was Rocky, howling and agreeing with her song. "Delia, we've got ourselves a singer," Sloane laughed, showing off Rocky's musical talents. "He's special. I knew it from the start," Delia said, hugging her furry friend. Meanwhile, her joy was slightly dampened by the fact that she needed money for her post-operative rehabilitation. And help came from an unexpected source. "Delia, let's put on a show in the park," Sloane suggested. "You, me and Rocky. Remember how we used to sing duets in school? We'll put out a donation box for your operation." "I don't know, Sloane," Delia replied sadly. "It feels strange. I remember our performances, but I'm not sure if I can do it." "The important thing is to start," Sloane insisted. She took charge of organising everything, preparing the donation box and choosing the right outfits. The day of the performance arrived. Rocky was washed and groomed, and even wore a bow tie like a true opera singer. Sloane started the show with a slightly melancholic but pleasant song, and Delia joined in, her fears melting away as she sang. When the dog began its aria, the park erupted in thunderous applause. People of all ages stopped to watch and smile at the unusual trio. This was undoubtedly a success. Coins rained into their collection box, as if someone had activated a money shower. As Delia sang, tears streamed down her face. It was as if her tormented soul was singing, not her. After the performance, many approached them, wishing them well and shaking their hands. Some even wanted to take photos with the dog. Now they performed almost every day. Delia was beginning to enjoy it. She did it not so much for the money, but for herself, to feel alive again and forget about her ailment. But one day, an incident nearly derailed their endeavour. While preparing for a concert, their dog Rocky chased after a butterfly and strayed a bit too far. Suddenly, a noose was thrown around his neck and he was dragged toward a van. Rocky resisted and whimpered, but the animal control workers were relentless. The van was just meters away when Delia finally caught up. "Leave my dog alone! He's not a stray!" she cried. "Mum, don't interfere with our work. We have scheduled operations, and the dog has no collar, so we're taking him to the shelter," the man in uniform replied coldly. "What kind of people are you? I'm telling you, he's my dog. Do you want money? Here, take it," Delia shouted, throwing the coins they had collected at their feet. An awkward silence fell, broken by the senior worker. "Let the dog go. Can't you see you're dealing with a crazy woman?" The noose was removed from Rocky's neck, and he joyfully ran to Delia, licking her from head to toe. They finished the concert that day, and it was their most successful yet. As they prepared to leave, Delia heard a voice calling, "Cooper! Cooper, come here!" Rocky perked up his ears and approached the stranger. "Cooper? His name is Rocky and he's my dog," Delia insisted. No, he's Cooper. Let me explain," the stranger said. Rocky wagged his tail in recognition. The young man introduced himself as Nicholas and explained that Cooper had lived with him for nearly 5 years. Everything was fine until his wife, who hated animals, kicked the dog out and filed for divorce, while Nicholas was away on a business trip. She wanted to hurt him as much as possible. Nicholas had searched for his 4-legged friend, even posting ads, but to no avail. "Now, I don't know what to do. Take Cooper back or leave him with you. Either way, it feels wrong. I can see you've both grown attached to each other," Nicholas said, puzzled. "Why don't you take Delia along with the dog?" Sloane chimed in, never one for tact. Her suggestion caught everyone off guard, but Nicholas warmed to the idea. He had a large house with plenty of room for everyone. Soon things were spinning like in the kindest of fairy tales. Nicholas's father was a renowned neurosurgeon who, after examining Delia, said there was hope for her recovery. They wasted no time and scheduled a complex surgery for early August. The operation was a success. Delia faced a long rehabilitation, but the prospect of walking again filled her with hope. Nicholas supported Delia in every way, and it seemed the two were developing feelings for each other. Their mutual feelings toward the dog brought them closer. Nicholas turned out to be caring and attentive, making Delia feel safe and secure. A year later, the couple celebrated their wedding, professing their love for each other. And Rocky continued to bring them together, proving that love and loyalty can overcome any obstacle. Leela was thoroughly enjoying the back rub her daughter was giving her. After a long day of hard work, her joints ached with unbearable pain. As Rosemary finished the massage, she said sadly, "Mum, isn't there anyone at the cafeteria who can help you? Why do you have to carry those heavy buckets and tubs?" Leela turned over and replied, "There aren't any men there, dear. It's just us women, and unfortunately, our work isn't considered heavy labour." Getting up from the bed, she added, "Thank you, daughter. for not leaving your mother to suffer with a sore back. Let's go have dinner. It's probably getting cold by now." With no husband, she had to make ends meet for herself and her daughter. Leela vividly remembered the hardships of her childhood and later years, so she made a vow never to give up or lose hope, even after spending several years in prison. She no longer considered herself an ex-convict, but sometimes people behind her back still called her that, mostly relatives from her ex-husband's side, who had abandoned her when she was imprisoned. Those were difficult years, and she tried not to think about them. Her daughter, understanding and wise beyond her years, never pried into the past, knowing it was painful for her mother. Over dinner, mother and daughter didn't exchange a word. It was only when they sat down to watch their favourite TV series that they both suddenly asked each other the same question. "What are you doing tomorrow?" Laughing, Rosemary jumped up from her chair. "I might go to a friend's house. I don't want to spend another day in front of the computer." Leela shared her own plans. "A day off means it's time to relax. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. Why are you looking at me like that? Let's go to the village tomorrow. Your friend can wait. In winter, you won't refuse some pickles and sweets, right? I know you love cherry jam and salad with bell peppers, though we'll have to work a bit to enjoy these treats later." Rosemary nodded and sat back down with the remote. "Fine by me. Fresh air will do me good. By the way, do you remember what episode we're on?" The next day, Leela woke up before her daughter, quickly got ready and prepared a light breakfast. The aroma of a delicious omelette soon had Rosemary on her feet. "I'm up, Mum. I'll be at the table soon." After a quick wash, Rosemary was in the kitchen within 5 minutes. Placing a generous serving of omelette in front of her, Leela dreamily said, "Wouldn't it be nice if someone brought breakfast in bed?" Noticing her daughter's surprised look, she added, "Never mind, just morning thoughts." After a light meal, they started getting ready for their trip. Leela decided to stock up on plenty of food to last the whole weekend. An hour and a half later, mother and daughter were at the dacha, first tidying up the house and putting away the groceries. This didn't take long, and Rosemary hurried to the flower beds to check on her plants. But as she passed the raspberry bushes, she stopped. "Look, Mum, you said they wouldn't take, but see how beautiful they are." Approaching her, Leela replied restrainedly, "So what? I didn't count on them anyway." These raspberry bushes had been planted with the help of her cousin Sylvia. Memories flooded back, bitter and unwelcome. It was because of Sylvia that Leela had ended up in prison. Years ago, Sylvia had decided to start a business and asked Leela to take on some responsibilities to cut costs. Though Leela knew the scheme was illegal, Sylvia convinced her it was safe. In the end, Leela was the one who paid the price, spending a few years behind bars, while Sylvia managed to escape unscathed. It is curious that after the incident, her cousin vanished and never contacted her again. Throughout all the years of her imprisonment, Leela did not receive a single letter from her cousin, even though she was incarcerated not only for her own sins. This was what Leela did not want to remember, but the raspberry bushes, which had taken root so well and bloomed, involuntarily brought all these bitter memories to the surface of her consciousness. Realizing that she had touched a painful topic, the daughter began to apologize to her mother. "I'm sorry, Mum. I didn't mean to upset you again. On the other hand, the bushes are not to blame, but if it's hard for you to look at them, I'll dig them up." Leela smiled. "No need, dear. Let them grow. Thank you, darling. They really are not to blame." Sitting on a bench in the gazebo, Leela pondered. Maybe I'm really overthinking this. So what if it happened? I don't have to remember it for the rest of my life. She asked herself so many questions at once that it was unclear which one to answer first, and what would change if she found the answers. Leela did not know this yet, but she was sure that under no circumstances would she meet her cousin and make peace with her. Apparently the pain and anger had taken deep root, and Leela had no desire to communicate with Sylvia. And where was she? What had become of her? No one knew, and no one tried to find out. Let it all remain in the past. Unexpectedly, her daughter suggested a distraction. "Come on, Mum. I planted some flowers last time. Let's see how they turned out." Ruffling her hair, Leela stood up and followed Rosemary to the whimsical flower beds made from empty old wooden planks. The flowers had indeed taken root and were doing relatively well in their new home. Rosemary joyfully walked around the flower bed. "Would you look at that? I was worried that nothing would come of it. See what a good homemaker your daughter is." Smiling in response, Leela cheerfully said, "I see everything. Don't think I don't notice. Bring the tools and a bucket. We'll weed and make new beds." The weekend flew by quickly, and soon mother and daughter returned home. While Rosemary could continue to manage her time, as she was on summer vacation, Leela had to prepare for her next shift. The cafeteria where she worked was located near the factory. In the morning, as she left the house, she decided to take a different route than usual. Passing several residential buildings, the woman suddenly stopped. A little boy was peeking out of the basement across the street, looking around warily. It was clear that he was frightened and hiding from someone. Leela approached the basement, and the boy tried to run away, but the woman managed to grab him by the sleeve. The thin, frightened boy looked at the stranger warily and said nothing. Leela, shaking her head, softly asked, "Are you hungry?" The boy nodded and almost cried. Looking him straight in the eyes, she saw anxiety and despair. Without hesitation, the woman led the boy to the cafeteria. Seeing the child with her, her colleague smirked. "Wow, it's been 2 days and you've already given birth again. Whose handsome boy is this? Don't tell me you are hiding another child from us." Leela only grumbled in response. "Always joking, Kate. Just feed the boy. He hasn't eaten in a long time." While her friend treated the boy, Leela thought about what to do with him. She couldn't think of anything better than to temporarily shelter the homeless boy at her place. After all, he had been hiding in the basement, and it was clear that he had either run away from home or, worse, was wandering the streets. At the same time, Leela understood that she would have to find his parents one way or another. Then Kate approached her. "Listen, I wanted to ask him what he would like to eat, but your boy just points with his fingers. I think he's mute." Leela was slightly taken aback. "Oh my goodness, I haven't even properly introduced myself to him." Changing her clothes, she went to the kitchen, where the foundling was sitting in a corner. "Can't you speak at all?" The boy shook his head, and then wrote with his finger on the table, where flour was scattered, "Ian." Leela placed a plate of vegetable salad with a cutlet in front of him. "Eat, Ian. Vitamins are excellent for you. So you can only communicate with gestures. Well, how are we going to talk?" But remembering that her daughter had a friend whose sister was deaf and knew sign language, Leela sighed with relief. "Well, okay, we'll figure something out." Ian spent the entire day by Leela's side, watching her cook with apparent interest. However, that evening, as Leela prepared to head home, Ian protested, gesturing that he needed to be taken back to the basement. Leela shook her head in response. "No, you won't be going back to that dungeon. Tonight you'll stay with me, and tomorrow we'll look for your parents." Little did she know the revelations that awaited her. Ahead lay days of searching and a shocking outcome. Interestingly, Leela's daughter Rosemary calmly and even joyfully accepted the homeless boy. She knew a bit of sign language and quickly found a way to communicate with him. Leela, curious, asked Rosemary to find out about his parents. "Ask him to explain, so I can find them more easily." Rosemary began conveying her mother's request through gestures. Ian nodded and started signing back, with Rosemary translating. "Basically, Mum, he ran away from an orphanage. He has no idea where his mother is." Remembering another crucial detail, Leela asked, "I almost forgot. How old is he?" Taking a pen and paper from Rosemary, Ian wrote that he was 8 years old and begged not to be sent away. Nearly in tears, Leela exclaimed, "Oh, dear Lord, how could I throw a child out onto the street?" She thought to herself, yet his mother didn't hesitate to do just that. The very next day, Leela reported Ian to the child welfare authorities. A stern woman, the inspector, dryly said, "You were obligated to inform the police immediately upon finding the child. Otherwise, it looks like you kidnapped him. What if his parents are searching for him or the orphanage is in a panic? Do you think that's right?" Leela was taken aback. "You're right, of course, but I couldn't leave him in that basement, and I did call you. May I take care of him while you would be looking into all the circumstances?" The welfare worker softened her tone. "Thank you for not abandoning the boy. You could have just walked by. Let's do this. Let him stay with you for now. We'll look into the circumstances, but you must understand that this is a violation, and we are obligated to return him to the orphanage." The search dragged on for several days. One day, Leela received a letter from a notary in her mailbox. She didn't know what it contained, as she wasn't expecting any inheritance. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago, and her father had never been part of her life. To avoid tormenting herself with guesses, Leela opened the letter in the presence of her daughter and their little new housemate. She turned pale as she read it. The letter was from a notary in a neighbouring region, informing her that she had inherited a house in a village, according to the will of her cousin Sylvia. The notary also requested her presence to discuss some details. Taking a day off work, Leela visited the notary. He greeted her in the reception area and led her to his office. Sitting down, Leela asked, "Why such an honour from my cousin?" The notary shrugged and replied reservedly, "I can't say, but your cousin Sylvia passed away after a long and serious illness. As I understand, you weren't in contact and couldn't have known. Just before her death, after making her will, Sylvia gave me this envelope. I don't know what's inside, but it seems to be some kind of message." At that moment, tears welled up in Leela's eyes, and she unabashedly took a handkerchief from her pocket and pressed it to her face. The notary waited for her to compose herself before continuing. "And another thing, Sylvia mentioned in passing that she had or has a child, and she asked that he be included in the will. I checked, of course, but found nothing. Then came the news of her death, and the trail went cold. Maybe you could help me in this situation." Opening the envelope, Leela nearly lost her senses. Inside, along with a folded notebook page, was a small photograph, and there, captured in the image, was Ian. It was difficult to mistake him, the same bright blue eyes, long lashes, and a few freckles around his nose. Leela continued to cry as she read the message. "Forgive me for everything, though even the most sincere apologies won't bring back the time you spent in captivity. I lost everything, my business, my relatives, and my son. I was stripped of my parental rights, and my child was taken to an orphanage. I didn't want to ask you for help, and my grief burned me out. Now I realize that I am living my last days. If you can, find my son Ian. He is a kind and gentle boy, and will accept you as his own mother. Though he is mute from birth, I don't think this will be an obstacle for you." At the end of the message was the address of the orphanage where her son had been taken. Dropping her head to her knees, Leela sobbed even harder. The notary helped Leela resolve all the issues and even assisted in finding her sister's grave. Meanwhile, the child welfare authorities had already discovered where the boy had run away from and were preparing documents for his return. But Leela firmly refused. She provided them with all the necessary certificates proving that Ian was the son of her cousin, and thus not a stranger, but her nephew. After some hesitation, the authorities left Leela in peace, and even helped her become his legal guardian. In the end, Ian became a full-fledged member of their family, and soon, realizing that this had to be done sooner or later, Leela took the boy to his mother's grave. Ian cried for a long time, but eventually calmed down and, through gestures translated by Rosemary, conveyed that he would always remember his mother and accept them as his own family. With that, the difficult and painful conflict between the two women came to an end. Though the reconciliation did not happen as it should have, Leela forgave her cousin, and the past began to release its grip, fading further and further away. Kira was in a wonderful mood this Sunday morning. It didn't matter that she had to rush around like a squirrel in a wheel until lunchtime, preparing everything for the table. This was nothing new to her. It was her daily routine at work. Kira, who had graduated from culinary school a few years ago, worked as a cook in a cafe. Over time, she had become quite skilled in preparing food, sometimes even creating quite elaborate dishes when the cafe hosted special events, which happened fairly often. Their cafe was renowned in the city for its cuisine. It was cosy, and in the evenings, live music played. During the day, employees from nearby offices, shops and wholesale warehouses frequented the cafe for its affordable lunch specials. In the evenings, it was filled with business travellers and executives who discussed their work over a glass of good cognac. Kira worked alongside several other women under the supervision of the head chef, Gary. A tall, imposing man with a domineering personality. He didn't hold his subordinates in high regard. Despite having no complaints about Kira's work, he never missed an opportunity to grumble, reminding them that without him they would be worthless. However, there was no one to complain to about Gary's rudeness and lack of tact. The cafe director valued him, and rightly so, as he was an experienced chef. His demands for discipline were seen as necessary, and his occasional rudeness was overlooked. Today, however, Kira was her own boss in her kitchen. Much of the preparation had been done the day before, but there was still plenty to do. Although only a small group of guests was expected for the anniversary celebration, at least 6 people would be coming, and they needed to be well fed and entertained. Kira was busy preparing the stuffing for a duck she planned to roast in the oven when the doorbell rang. Wiping her hands, she hurried to answer it, thinking her husband had returned from his business trip. He had left 2 days ago from a neighbouring city to resolve an urgent supply issue for their furniture factory. They had argued about it, with Kira expressing her frustration that he always had urgent matters right before important family events. Donald had taken offence, grumbling that she didn't understand the pressures of his job and that no one else could handle the suppliers like he could. They hadn't spoken since, and Kira felt a bit guilty for being so harsh, even though Donald rarely helped her in the kitchen, always joking that he was an engineer, not a cook. However, it wasn't her husband at the door, but her mother-in-law, Willow. She lived separately from the young couple and was retired, though she occasionally tutored students in chemistry and biology to supplement her pension. She was a highly regarded teacher and knew how to prepare students for university entrance exams, earning a decent additional income. "Willow, you're so early. The celebration isn't for another 3 hours," Kira exclaimed after greeting her. "I know, dear. I came early to help you. You must be tired from all the cooking," Willow replied. Kira was pleased to have her mother-in-law's help. They got along very well, and Willow was always supportive and cheerful, unlike her son Donald, who often took offence at the slightest joke and rarely offered to help. While Donald usually excused himself after a brief chat with his mother, Kira and Willow could talk for hours, often losing track of time. Willow quickly changed and got to work, helping Kira with the preparations. She chopped vegetables, arranged snacks on plates, and prepared salads. Before they knew it, it was almost lunchtime, and the anniversary celebration was about to begin. Kira had about an hour left to prepare. "Oh, Willow, everything seems ready. I think I'll go and freshen up and change. The guests will be arriving soon, and I want to greet them looking my best."
Yes, of course, go ahead. I'll just arrange a few more things on the plates. Indeed, everything seems to be in place.
Kira, dressed up, emerged from the bedroom and asked her mother-in-law, "So, what do you think of my new dress? Isn't it a bit short? I'm a little worried, to be honest. Donald and I had a quarrel, and I can't stop thinking about it. I love him deeply and hope we can make up today." Willow encouraged her daughter-in-law.
You look absolutely stunning, like a young girl. You don't look like someone who works in the food industry. You're so slim. Donald will be thrilled. White suits you so well. You look like a bride.
Kira felt a bit better after her mother-in-law's words, but she couldn't forget the argument with her husband. Why had he started treating her this way? Why did he rarely embrace or compliment her like he used to when they were dating? Now everything seemed wrong to him. He found faults everywhere and was dissatisfied with everything. Their weekend strolls around the city had become a thing of the past. He always blamed his busy schedule and fatigue from work. He never asked how her day went or why she was late. It was all so sad. Despite everything, Kira loved Donald and eagerly awaited his arrival, hoping to reconcile and forget their grievances. The guests began to arrive, greeting each other. The women complimented the birthday girl on her appearance, while the men, impatiently eyeing the laden table, started discussing their affairs. Finally Donald arrived, clearly in a bad mood. He didn't even kiss his wife and headed straight to the bathroom. There was no hope of him bringing a bouquet of flowers. His mother disapprovingly watched him go, shaking her head. Kira's joy also faded. She hadn't expected Donald to still be angry. It wasn't worth it. Finally, everyone sat down, and the birthday wishes began. The mother-in-law presented Kira with a smartwatch. Kira gasped in surprise. She hadn't expected such a gift. She eagerly awaited her husband's turn, but when it came, he said dryly, even without standing up, "Happy birthday, Kira. I wish you the wisdom not to ruin your husband's mood before his next trip." His best friend Ben couldn't help but ask, "Is that all? What about a gift for your beloved wife?" The man grumbled in annoyance. "She still needs to earn a gift. Besides, my mum has already outdone herself. And isn't my arrival a gift enough?" Kira was shocked. How could he humiliate her in front of everyone? What had she done to deserve this? Even on her birthday, he couldn't say a kind word. Excusing herself to the guests, she rushed to the bathroom, feeling tears welling up. She needed to calm down and not let her husband ruin the entire celebration. When she returned to the living room, everyone was engrossed in their conversations. Her husband was loudly complaining to a colleague about his troubles with suppliers on his business trip. Kira sat down, not knowing what to do or how to act. She had no appetite and felt like crying again. Willow broke the tension by standing up and raising a toast. "Dear Kira, I wish you happiness and good health from the bottom of my heart. I love you, my dear. I am so glad you came into our family. You carry the weight of this family on your shoulders. And please, don't be angry with Donald, dear. You know he sometimes speaks without thinking. Be happy, my dear. You deserve it." Everyone applauded, raised their glasses and drank to the birthday girl's health. Kira felt a weight lift off her chest. However, Donald was clearly displeased with his mother's words, though he tried to appear in agreement. The guests tactfully ignored the tension between the couple and continued enjoying the food and conversation. Willow genuinely wished her daughter-in-law a happy birthday and tried to lift her spirits, seeing how hurt she was by her husband's words. Today, she was once again reminded that her son had grown into a callous man with a bad temper, who didn't appreciate the love and kindness of those around him. She had raised him alone without a father. Willow believed that the absence of a male figure in their family had affected her son. Her job as a teacher
along with the constant preparation of lessons and reading educational literature at home, undoubtedly impacted her communication with him. Most of the time, he was left to his own devices. After a party, when the guests had left and her mother-in-law had gone home, Donald, slumped at the table and thoroughly inebriated, continued to drink alone, downing shot after shot. Suddenly, Kira noticed that the wedding ring he always wore was missing from his finger, and asked him about it, though she knew she wouldn't get a sensible answer in his state. Donald dramatically raised his left hand, looked at it and slurred,
"You know, I wonder where it went. Maybe it fell off in the sink or in the toilet when I was washing my hands. Why are you picking on me? Don't you take your frustrations out on me? How long are you going to argue with me? I need to use the bathroom. Come on, show me the way."
Inside, Kira was seething. She wanted to confront Donald, but she knew his temper. She understood that if she started an argument now, there was no telling how it might end. So she remained silent and helped him to the bathroom to prevent him from hurting himself. Then she began gathering his clothes for the laundry. Her heart was heavy. Her birthday had been ruined. She had hoped for something nice from her husband, but he had gotten drunk instead. Suddenly, something clattered to the floor. It was Donald's wedding ring, fallen from his jacket pocket. His shirt reeked of women's perfume, and there were lipstick stains on the collar. Everything became clear. Kira felt disgusted. She couldn't bear to touch his clothes. She never wore lipstick herself, except a curing one. How revolting, she thought, tossing the shirt into the laundry basket. So, this was what his business trips were about. She always believed his words, sympathized with him for being so busy at work. Poor thing, always tired. Just then his phone lit up with a new message, and Kira read it without hesitation. "Darling, our date was wonderful. You're my insatiable tiger. I miss you already. I'm trying on your gift. Your ruby earrings are gorgeous. Kisses." Kira sat down, and tears of anger overwhelmed her. He had lied, taking advantage of her trust. He had humiliated and hurt her. And on top of that, his mistress got ruby earrings. At this moment, Donald stumbled out of the bathroom and collapsed onto the bed, snoring loudly. Kira cried in the bathroom for a long time. She went to bed after midnight, trying to keep her distance from her treacherous husband. But even in his sleep, he pulled her close, mumbling,
"Quinn, my kitten, come to me."
This was the final straw for Kira. Even in his dreams he thought of another woman, not her. She was nothing to him, just a servant, a mere convenience. Why had this happened? She had been happy, making plans for the future with the man she loved, only to be left alone with pain and betrayal. Wrapped in a blanket, Kira sat on the couch, dozing fitfully until morning. The next day was difficult for both of them. Kira, her eyes swollen from crying, watched as Donald, cursing under his breath, rummaged through the drawers.
"Why are you looking at me?"
he grumbled.
"Better give me a pill, my head is killing me."
Kira exploded. "Let Quinn take care of you. And you didn't lose your wedding ring, you took it off, so your mistress wouldn't see it. It's in your jacket pocket. You're despicable, Donald, the lowest of the low." Her husband was furious.
"How dare you go through my pockets? What right do you have?"
He was livid with rage. He didn't apologize for his infidelity or promise to change. He didn't assure her it was a one-time mistake. Instead, he said,
"Yes, I have a woman I dream about. I'm a man. I have the right to relax. Do you know how hard I work? What can I even talk to you about? All you do is cook your soups and stews. Be grateful I haven't left you."
He paused, then added,
"Enough with the hysterics. Leave me alone and make some coffee."
Kira shook her head, hardly believing what she was hearing. For the first time in her life, She had smashed a pile of freshly washed dishes to the floor in anger. "Enough!" she cried out. "I won't tolerate this treatment any more. I'm leaving and we're getting a divorce. Go ahead and sleep with your Quinn all you want." Donald waved his hand dismissively, drank some water, stepped over the broken dishes and went back to sleep. He figured she would calm down eventually. After all, she had nowhere else to go. And he was right. Kira had no family left besides her mother-in-law. Life had dealt her cruel blows from an early age. Kira became an orphan at the age of 6 when her parents died in a car accident on an icy road. Their car, with summer's tyres, spun out of control and collided head-on with a truck. Her parents did not survive. Little Kira was left in the care of her grandmother. At first, the girl grieved deeply. She remembered her parents well and often looked at their photos, crying. She missed their love and affection. Although her grandmother was loving and caring, trying her best to provide for Kira, it wasn't the same. Kira's mother had been very affectionate, and her father doted on her. After their death, they lived on her grandmother's small pension and Kira's survivor benefits. The sudden illness and death of her grandmother was another significant shock. Although her aunt took her in, life was never the same. Her aunt was strict and serious, not someone Kira could confide in. When Kira enrolled in culinary school, she was relieved to move into the dormitory. She quickly made friends with her roommates, but the loneliness and longing for her family never truly left her. One Sunday, while walking in the park, Kira caught the eye of a handsome young man. He smiled at her and later approached her, offering her ice cream. "You're the most beautiful girl in the city," he said flirtatiously. He introduced himself as Donald and asked for her name. They arranged a date that very day. Donald was polite and attentive, offering his jacket when she felt cold. They fell in love and their relationship blossomed, eventually leading to marriage. Kira got along well with her mother-in-law, who was kind and understanding, especially knowing that Kira was an orphan. The young woman was happy, or so she thought, until her husband revealed his cruel and cynical nature. The realization that her beloved husband was so heartless devastated her. She couldn't stop crying, feeling a lump in her throat. After the morning argument with her husband, Kira went to work feeling exhausted, as if she hadn't rested at all. She decided to rent an apartment and not to return to her husband for a while. At work, the day started poorly. The head chef Gary was in a foul mood, shouting orders at his staff. "Why are you all moving like sleepy flies?" he barked. "People will be here for lunch soon, and you haven't even peeled the potatoes yet. Do I have to do everything myself? And you, Kira, why are you so sluggish? Didn't get enough sleep? Come on, girls, move faster." His constant nagging was nauseating, especially since everyone was busy with their tasks. But Kira had no idea what had caused the chef's latest outburst. The fact of the matter was that Gary had long ago promised a kitchen position to his relative. However, fulfilling that promise had proven difficult, as hiring extra staff was not permitted. Thus, he needed to ensure that one of the current cooks was let go, and to Kira's unluckiness, he chose her as his target, and not by chance. He suspected that she was the director's favourite, so to speak, and could potentially replace him if needed. Throughout the day, the chef gave the girls no respite. This ended tragically for Kira. Preoccupied with her thoughts, though it didn't affect her cooking, she awkwardly tilted a large pot of broth, spilling it onto her hand. "Ouch!" Kira cried. "That hurt so much." The other girls rushed to her aid, advising her to run her hand under cold water. But it did little to help. Her skin instantly reddened and a large blister formed. The pain was so intense that she could barely hold back tears. Gary wanted to reprimand her sternly, asking where her mind was, but seeing the injury, he immediately sent her to the hospital. At the reception, she encountered a young, handsome doctor named Dr. Martin. He had arrived a couple of days prior,
transferred from another city hospital as part of an experience exchange program. Moaning and barely holding back tears, Kira showed the surgeon her burned hand. After examining her, the doctor prescribed a treatment plan. To her fears that an ugly scar would remain, he reassured her. "Don't worry, nothing will remain. Follow my instructions and it will heal properly. You're young, everything will be fine." He smiled encouragingly and gently touched her shoulder. This friendly, comforting gesture moved Kira so deeply that she unexpectedly burst into tears in the office, sobbing and wiping her tears with her good hand. "Oh, don't be so upset," the doctor said. "I told you, your hand will be fine. It just needs time to heal. So go home and take care of yourself."
"Doctor, I have nowhere to go," Kira sobbed even harder. "My husband kicked me out."
"How could he kick out someone as lovely as you?" Dr. Martin tried to console her. Overwhelmed by emotions, Kira poured out her heart to him, recounting the humiliation she endured from Donald on her birthday and the discovery she made in his belongings. She explained how she had left home in a fit of emotion. "You know what?" the doctor said after a moment of thought. "If your situation is so dire, I might have a solution. I had an elderly patient whom I successfully operated on, essentially saving his life. He was a lonely man living alone in a private house, but age caught up with him and he fell ill, knowing his end was near. Before he passed, he bequeathed his house to me, despite my protests. He insisted, saying that no one else had shown such care for his health in his final years. So, if you'd like, I can give you the keys. No one lives there now, and it has all the amenities and some furniture left behind. It could be a place for you to stay while you get back on your feet." Kira was taken aback. "Thank you so much, but we barely know each other. Aren't you afraid to let a stranger stay in your house?" The doctor smiled, captivated by this tearful, beautiful petite woman. "No, my dear, I'm not afraid. I see countless patients every day, so I have a good sense of people. I can tell you're a decent woman who's just going through a tough time. Life happens, so take the keys and don't worry. Everything will work out." She was given a medical leave note and instructed to return in a few days for a follow-up. Kira found the house quickly. It was indeed close to the hospital. The old brick house stood proudly, despite its age. Entering the small courtyard, she realized no one had been there for a long time. The grass was overgrown and wind-blown litter had scattered about. Inside, a thick layer of dust covered the floors and furniture, and the air was stale with the scent of an empty house. However, the lights worked, water flowed from the taps, and the fairly new refrigerator hummed to life when plugged in. "It seems livable," Kira thought with a glimmer of hope. She called a taxi and went to retrieve her belongings. Thankfully, her husband was not home, but the stale smell of alcohol still lingered in the air. She packed the essentials into 2 bags, gathered her documents and left. In the evening, at her new dwelling, she managed to change linen, clean the dust, make coffee, and prepare a sandwich before the exhaustion from the argument with her husband and the pain from her burn overwhelmed her, and she fell into a deep sleep. Donald, meanwhile, felt no remorse for his actions. He was having an affair with a woman who sought sponsors for a luxurious lifestyle. Their relationship was convenient for him, with no commitments, unlike his marriage. He was tired of the responsibilities and questions that came with married life, being interrogated about his whereabouts, facing disapproval for drinking with friends, and contributing to the family budget. He looked forward to the freedom that divorce would bring, especially since the apartment was his to begin with, and there would be no property disputes with Kira. Later that evening, Kira's mother-in-law called her to check on the situation. The call woke Kira from her sleep, and she struggled to orient herself. When she heard her mother-in-law's voice, she couldn't help but feel emotional. She explained that Donald had effectively kicked her out, and she had decided to leave for good.
They were getting a divorce, and on top of everything, she had burned her hand at work. Willow was shocked and offered her home to Kira, but Kira didn't want to impose, especially since she had accepted a doctor's offer to stay in a small house. Her mother-in-law promised to visit the next day to help with the cleaning. Together, they transformed the house into a cosy living space, hanging new curtains and scrubbing the floors. The small yard outside was charming, perfect for enjoying fresh air and listening to birdsong in the summer. Kira went for physiotherapy treatments to accelerate the healing process of her burn wound. During another treatment session, she saw Dr. Martin, and he invited Kira to his office. "Thank you, Dr. Martin. You are very attentive. I even feel a bit embarrassed. You spend so much effort and time on me, and you have enough worries of your own. And besides, I will leave your house as soon as I feel better." He smiled gently and said, "Kira, don't worry about the house. I don't need it yet. You can stay. I can even help you with the repairs if you invite me over." Kira, feeling the doctor's attention, blushed deeply. She also felt an attraction to this wonderful man. "Dr. Martin, I would be happy to help you too once I recover. I see how much energy you put into your work, how you empathize with your patients. I am lucky to have met you. I am simply happy and obliged to help you. And of course, feel free to visit any time. I'm not working now, and I am always ready to welcome you." "Then I'll come by this evening, but not alone, with my son. I have no one to leave him with." "Of course, I would be happy to have him. I love children." When his car stopped at the gate of her house, Kira's heart skipped a beat. She was inexplicably nervous. At the door stood Jonathan, with a boy of about 6, a chubby, cheerful little fellow. While the adults hesitated, the little one confidently extended his hand to the hostess and greeted her. "Hi, I'm Kevin. And are you Kira? I already know, Dad told me. Do you have any toys here? Any pets?" A flurry of questions broke the ice. Kira laughed, seating her guests. Jonathan complimented her. "Wow, your place looks so cosy now, knowing how it was before. You are a magician. Everything is so clean and tidy." "Please have a seat. We'll have dinner soon. I want to treat you with a homemade meal. And the tea is simply divine, with various herbs and a wonderful aroma. I also made a quick biscuit with raisins. I hope you will enjoy it. Please, help yourselves." "Thank you, I won't refuse. The day has been hellish. The clinic was packed with patients, including 3 children with fractures. So there hadn't even been time for a proper cup of tea." After the dinner, Kevin noticed something fascinating through the window. He fidgeted and asked, "Dad, can I go play outside?" His father, of course, agreed, and the adults continued their conversation. "Your work is so important, Dr. Martin. You are truly saintly. What could be more noble than healing people? You deserve honour and admiration." After a brief pause and a flush of embarrassment, she asked, "Dr. Martin, please excuse my curiosity, but where is Kevin's mother? Are you divorced?" Jonathan replied, "Well, the story isn't very nice. I was married, now I'm divorced. I have a 6-year-old son. We were together for 7 years, through good times and bad. Just as life seemed to stabilize, it all fell apart. My wife met someone and left 2 years ago. She said she was bored at home alone while I worked long hours, even on weekends and holidays. She left our son with me and never looked back, claiming she needed to sort out her personal life. She promised to take him later, but she never did. Kevin missed her terribly at first, but he's adjusted now. I'm glad she left him with me. My son is the meaning of my life, the reason I keep going." Kira listened intently, sighing heavily. She thought, "He's such a good man, both as a doctor and a person." She found herself drawn to him. In essence, they were 2 lonely souls, betrayed and discarded. "What are your plans for the future, Kira?" Jonathan asked. "Will you reconcile with your husband?" "I'm getting a divorce, Dr. Martin. Kira replied. "There's no other way. I can't forgive his infidelity and bad attitude." She sighed deeply. Jonathan suggested, "Well, everything will be all right. Trust me. I know what I say. Thank you for a wonderful dinner. I don't want to leave, but I must. Early start tomorrow, and I need to get Kevin to school."
"Dr. Martin, I can help with Kevin," Kira offered.
"Whenever you need, just call. I can stay with him at your place or take him to mine. I love children, and I think we'll get along just fine." "That would be wonderful, Kira. Thank you," Jonathan replied. "I often work night shifts, and though I ask a neighbour to watch him, I still worry." As they parted, Jonathan thanked Kira for the lovely evening and her culinary skills again. He wished her a speedy recovery and kissed her gently on the cheek. Kira barely slept that night, tossing and turning, thinking of Jonathan and his compliments. She could still feel his touch and only fell asleep at dawn. In the morning, he called. "Good morning, Kira. How did you sleep? I thought about you all night. About us. Kevin and I are thrilled with you. So we're expecting you at our place this evening. It's our turn to host. Deal?" Kira was delighted for the invitation. She had been hoping to see Jonathan and Kevin again. She decided to bake some pastries with raspberry jam. If her hand was fully healed, she would have prepared more, but for now this would have to do. She realized she had nothing suitable to wear, wanting to look her best. She chose her favorite light blue blouse and a matching skirt, feeling comfortable and elegant. Despite her efforts to calm down, her heart raced all day at the thought of Jonathan. The evening passed warmly and cosily, like a family gathering. Strangely, in Jonathan's house, Kira felt completely at ease. Her heart was light and content, as if she had always belonged there. Kira quickly found common ground with the child. He showed her the textbooks and notebooks they had bought for school. Then they all played dominoes together, solved riddles, played various games, and watched cartoons. The child enjoyed the evening immensely, being the centre of attention. When Kevin fell asleep, Kira prepared to leave. "I must go. It's getting late. Thank you for the wonderful evening. I feel so refreshed. Your son is remarkable, intelligent, bright and sociable. We are now great friends. I even forgot about all my problems." Jonathan approached Kira and suddenly pulled her close, kissing her so passionately that her head spun. He whispered to her, "Kira, please don't go. I know this is crazy, but I can't bear to let you go even for a second. I'm going mad over you. You are so tender, so sensual. Please don't push me away." Kira struggled with herself, finding it so difficult to pull away from Jonathan. Yet she gently pushed him back and almost ran home, saying, "Forgive me. I can't do this. It's not right. I am still married." At home, she cried into her pillow half the night, berating herself. "What a fool I am! What if Jonathan is offended and we never see each other again? But I have fallen in love too, so unexpectedly and so deeply. Tomorrow I will file for divorce." 3 weeks later, when her hand had healed, Kira returned to her work. There, Gary greeted her with shocking news. "I'm sorry, Kira, but your position has been filled. We've already hired another cook. You've been sloppy lately, clumsy and careless, and you know we can't tolerate that here. So, go to the HR department and get your final paycheck." Kira felt deeply hurt, tears welling up in her eyes. "How can you do this? Why? I've worked here for years without a single complaint. And getting burned was an accident. It could happen to anyone. I will complain about this." But Gary silenced her. "Don't you dare complain. If you do, I'll give you such a bad reference that no one will hire you, not even as a dishwasher." Although it was all illegal, Kira did not argue. She knew the head chef would eventually get her fired. Nevertheless, she walked home in utter confusion. She needed to live, but without money, she wouldn't last long. Her mood plummeted.
Sitting in the kitchen, she aimlessly stared at her surroundings. Only now did Kira notice that one of the tiles near the floor was loose. She must have dislodged it while mopping, she thought. She touched it, intending to put it back in place, but it fell out completely, revealing a hole behind it. What could be in there? She wondered with sudden interest. Her gloomy mood lifted instantly. She had only read about such things in books and never imagined it could happen in real life. Putting on a glove, Kira carefully reached into the hole in the stove. She felt a bundle and pulled it out. It was small but quite heavy. With bated breath, she emptied the contents of the dusty cloth bag onto the table. It was gold! Rings, chains, massive signet rings, and even a few large nuggets. Entranced, she gazed at the treasure before her. Then, catching her breath, she decided to call Dr. Martin. After all, it was his house. She didn't know how to tell him about the find over the phone, so she sent a short text message. "Jonathan, come as soon as you can." And within an hour, Jonathan rushed into the house. "Kira, what happened? I thought about so many bad things on the way here. Are you all right?" Kira showed him her discovery, explaining, "I'm sorry, it wasn't intentional. A tile came loose and I tried to put it back, and found that." Jonathan examined the find in amazement. "Wow, what a discovery!" he exclaimed. "I had no idea there were such treasures in this house." "You're incredible, Kira, and you bring luck. Families have lived and died here, but only you just stumble upon a hidden treasure. It's a sign, Kira. Let's consider this find as to share." Overwhelmed with emotion, Jonathan embraced Kira and kissed her. She blushed, but did not pull away. She had almost forgotten the pleasure of being held in strong masculine arms. "What are you planning to do with this treasure?" Jonathan asked. Kira shared that she had been fired from the cafe and added, "I was so upset. I thought I needed to find a new job quickly, but now it seems I don't have to rush. I can take my time to find a good position. Oh, besides, I've had an idea for you. There's a vacant space in the hospital where I work. It used to be a kitchen for patients, but it was outsourced. There are many visitors to the hospital, but no shops or cafes nearby. If you rent that space, you could open a cafe. Patients and their families would love it. What do you think, Kira? Could you handle it? I'll help with the renovations and paperwork. It's a big project, but I think you can do it." Kira considered the idea. "I can definitely handle the kitchen side of things. I know exactly what's required for baking and cooking." "That sounds perfect," Jonathan said. "Let's do it. I think it will be profitable." He looked intently at Kira and asked, "Tell me honestly, do you still love your husband? I know I rushed things, but my feelings for you haven't changed. I love you, Kira. And Kevin keeps asking about you. I need to know how you feel about me. Am I just a friend to you, or—" "The divorce is in 2 days," Kira replied softly, "and I'll be free. Is that what you wanted to hear? Or am I mistaken?" "Yes, Kira, that's exactly it," Jonathan said. "I can't propose to a married woman, but to a free, beautiful and desirable one, I can and will. Do I have a chance?" Instead of answering, Kira embraced Jonathan and kissed him. "You're in my dreams every night," she whispered. "I've never met a man as genuine as you. I love you too. I feared my feelings before, but now I'm sure. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll give Kevin all my love and care, and I'll be a devoted wife to you." Jonathan could no longer contain his emotions. They were swept away by passion and never parted again. Jonathan negotiated the lease for the hospital space. They hired a construction crew, and the work was completed quickly. Kira, in a move of defiance against Gary, poached the most diligent employees from the cafe. Fresh pastries, good coffee and tea, and sandwiches were a hit with patients and their families. Kira and Jonathan got married in a small ceremony with close family and friends. They decided to move into Jonathan's house, but first needed to renovate it to modern standards. The family's most significant changing was a black terrier puppy. The little dog became a companion for the whole family, especially loving to play with Kevin. The clever and intelligent puppy was adept at sensing the family's moods and became Kevin's most devoted friend. Meanwhile, Kira delightedly began decorating the yard with flowers. Near the house, she planted climbing roses and clematis, and along the path, bright purple fragrant thyme and creeping low sage. They also set up a gazebo, providing a place to relax and enjoy the vibrant flower beds, or settle down with a book or a cup of tea. Overall, it was a paradise, a cosy haven away from the bustle and noise of the big city. The family felt happy in their wonderful home. Kira understood the responsibilities Jonathan bore at work and never bothered him unnecessarily. Instead, she thanked him for everything, appreciating his steadfast support. Jonathan, in turn, cherished every moment spent with her and often said, holding her tightly, "My family is my everything." Soon, Kira discovered she was expecting a child with her beloved husband. 5 years passed and much had changed. After the divorce, Donald had a falling out with his mother, and upon learning that she was on Kira's side and continued to see her, he became deeply offended and stopped communicating with her. His mistress Quinn, realizing the position of wife was now vacant, began pursuing Donald to marry her. However, he desired only casual, uncomplicated relationships. They began to argue frequently and eventually parted ways. Donald, overenjoyed, indulged in reckless behaviour, squandering money in bars and changing women as often as he changed his clothes. However, this lifestyle soon lost its appeal. At night, in his drunken stupor, each woman seemed like a goddess, but the sobering morning revealed yet another empty shell with whom he had nothing in common. He grew tired of these fleeting encounters and found himself short on money. Besides, the thought that Kira was thriving gnawed at him, filling him with bitter envy and emptiness. It was Kevin's birthday, and the family celebrated at home with friends and relatives. They grilled kebabs in the gazebo, and his little sister, like a spinning top, danced around the birthday boy, who entertained her with tickles. Suddenly the gate opened, and in walked a well-groomed, stylishly dressed woman, rolling a suitcase behind her and clicking her heels. Everyone turned to look, and a hush fell over the table. Jonathan saw his ex-wife and turned pale. He was not pleased to see her. Rising from the table, he approached her and demanded, "What are you doing here? Why have you come?" The woman, unfazed, smiled sweetly and chattered, "Hello, Jonathan. I've just returned home. I remembered it's Kevin's birthday, so I bought him a present." She pulled an expensive robot from a bag and called out to her son, "Kevin, darling, Mum is back. I missed you so much. Here's your present." She was taken aback when a tall teenager rose from the table. She remembered her son as a small child. Kevin walked over to his biological mother, looked at her for a long time, and then calmly replied, "Why did you come, Mother? You're too late. I've grown up and don't play with robots anymore. Kira raised and loves me. She was a real mum to me and Dad is happy with her. I love my little sister too. You are a stranger to me now. It's best if you leave." Rowan stood there stunned and humiliated, not knowing what to do. She had expected her son to run into her arms, overjoyed to see her. Jonathan added, "Please, go away. You can see that Kevin doesn't want to see you, and you were stripped of your parental rights long ago. You're no mother, just a cuckoo who abandoned her husband and child for some worthless fling. Forget the way back here, or you'll face trouble. I don't care where or with whom you live. Our paths have long since diverged." He pushed Rowan out and closed the gate. The celebration continued, and Kira sighed, asking her husband, "Don't you feel sorry for her? Maybe she really has come to her senses. After all, she is his mother." Jonathan replied firmly,
No, I don't. If Kevin himself wanted to see her, I might have allowed it. But the boy understood everything long ago. You are his mother, the one who loves and cares for him. Rowan can have her life as she pleases. She made her choices back then. You are my beloved wife, the mother of my daughter. I need no one else. And Kevin doesn't need her either. You heard his words. The children ran to Kira, hugging her and saying, "Mummy, we love you so much." Kira was overwhelmed with happiness, for all her dreams had come true. She was doing what she loved, had a strong family and a loving husband. Looking at her happy family, Kira thought, happiness is the only thing you can give to another without taking anything away from yourself.